Let's go ahead and get started. We have been playing catch up since the power outage during the study session. So I do apologize to everyone that's been waiting for us. And we did have quite a bit. In addition to that, we did have a heavy closed session agenda. So trying to get back on track. We do have a very heavy open session agenda. So we will try to move along quickly as much as possible. Okay, so with that, we reconvene to open session. And if we can please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Member Gutierrez, would you mind leading us in that?
Yes, of course. Everybody please stand and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may sit.
Thank you. Very official. Appreciate it. And with that, we have one item to report on closed session, correct, Ms. Salinas? That's my item. I didn't have anything from staff, correct?
Nothing from staff.
Okay.
And Ms. Martinez.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Just a reminder to read each item from closed session. You're on mute.
I don't know what's wrong with me today. I am the only item I need to read out. I read when going into the meeting, so now I will only report out on the item that had a something to report, which is public employment superintendent. And the readout is that during the recently concluded closed session, the board voted to appoint Mark Triplett as a district's superintendent beginning July 2nd, 2020. The vote was the motion was made by Member Rodriguez, seconded by Member Gutierrez, and the vote was in favor unanimously. Okay.
Can I add something to it?
Of course.
This is per the advice of our attorney, Greg Dennis, that we do it this way.
Absolutely, and I think yes, you were probably going to clarify as well. We will be voting on the contract, which is what makes it official, a little bit later now here in open session. Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Member Rodriguez. And with that, we move to item 7, public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Aquino, do we have some speaker cards that were submitted today?
We do. We have 2, President Martinez, and I will get on those now. First one, non-agendized matter. Dear President Martinez and Board of Trustees, I respectfully request to be reimbursed for all the legal fees my colleague and I have incurred in order to get our retirement service credit with PERS rectified, especially since hers has still not been corrected. I do not believe we should have had to retain legal counsel in order for the district to correct a simple reporting error after it was brought to their attention. The first legal invoice was submitted in December 2019, and we have another one we'd like to submit. I do not believe that if a member of NTA or CSCA found themselves in the same situation, they would have had to go to the same lengths we had in order to get a resolution. Sincerely, Julie Radcliffe. Dear Newark Unified Board of Education, it is non-negotiable that everyone deserves to be physically safe when at Newark Memorial High School, whether they are a student, staff member, parent, or community member. My name is Anna Katabaugh, and I have spent time addressing safety matters in the music room 502 and 513 at Newark Memorial High School. Thank you for your time today. There are current work orders out that I have submitted. I bring your attention to this because the environment is not physically safe. Once I was trapped inside a side room with no means of escape. After that, I discovered that there are at least 4 side rooms in room 502 along one wall that cannot escape from if shut inside. There is a culture of putting tape over the locks so locks don't shut. This is not acceptable. Rooms 502 and 513 also have had numerous holes in the walls that have been repaired. These are perfectly cut circles and places for outlets that mice have been using as a thorough way to access the classroom. I also heard a mouse fell from the ceiling during the 18-19 school year in room 513. Some of these holes in the wall I referenced were live electric outlets. I was present when those were fixed to ensure being electrocuted was no longer a fear I had for myself or others. If you're around late at night, you notice there are cats that linger outside the building, presumably hunting mice. To say mice extermination services are needed is an understatement. While not apparent at first, mouse poop is all over everything. I am surprised I only found one dead mouse that was properly removed. Servers located in between the classrooms routinely overheat and make everything smell smoky. Students find this distracting. There are no windows. Ventilation is a problem.
Okay.
Or reach out for financial support in order to provide a physically safe environment to all students, parents, and staff, and community members who use rooms 502 and 513. Currently, rooms 502 and 513 do not provide physically safe environments for anyone to return to. How will you address these immediate safety concerns? You're muted, President.
Those were the only two items? Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the superintendent report. Miscellaneous.
Yes, thank you. And let me share my screen just a second. Let's see. My apologies. Today is the day with technical difficulties. My apologies. Oh my goodness. Just a second. Well, let me, here we go. Thank you. Good evening, members of the community, board president, and certainly our Board of Education. Just a very quick update. We will have a longer item later on tonight to talk about the reopening and some of our planning. But I want to make sure that all of our community knows that we are serving summer meals all through the months of summer vacation. And so through the months, through August 10th, we will have meals at our 3 locations from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Again, students do not have to be present, and families can come pick up meals for their students. At Schilling Elementary, Newark Junior High School, and our central kitchen near Birch Grove Intermediate. I want to give a big shout out to the Tri-City volunteers, to Miss Ana Leon and our promotoras, and also our parent partners and Miss Ashley Acosta. They worked really hard to get food boxes out, and so twice a month now at Schilling Elementary, the first and third Wednesday of the month, if families that are in need, they can drive by, pick up some lunches, but also pick up food boxes that are generously donated by the Tri-City volunteers. Also, a reminder to our families, registration continues. So please register your students so we can make really great plans for the next 2021 school year. We have, as I shared the last board meeting, have a hotline that is open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 12. And this has already started, and this is for the month of June. At this point, we're not sure if we're going to be able to open it up for July and August, but again, we are going to keep pushing for families to please enroll your students, and we will be sending out a call out of a reminder next week for our families. And lastly, I want to take some time to, this is the last meeting for our board member, Cesar Castillo. And I know that our board can probably take a few minutes right now to thank him for his service. To be a high school senior is a very complicated time. And this overlay of the pandemic, and as we all learned so much about what Cesar has participated in, and just the wonderful activities that really, wow, amazing. And on top of that, to serve and come in and be a part of our board meetings. So on behalf of the school district and from my behalf, thank you, Cesar. Congratulations, you're on to wonderful, wonderful things into your next endeavors. And during this time, I'll let the board also speak.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas. I'll leave myself to the end there. Member Nguyen, would you like to say something to Student Member Castillo?
Yes, Student Member Castillo, since I joined the board in September, I've always been very impressed with your articulation. You're obviously super intelligent and smart, graduating in the top 10 of your class. That's a great achievement. And I know that you're going to be off to doing great things. And I just wanted to wish you well and continue to reach for the stars, and you will achieve everything that you want in life. I know that that is very true for you. So congratulations again.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
Member Castillo, I know it's been a rough ride at high school with the different principals, and during the last couple of years that you've been our student board member, you've represented your constituency, the students at New Memorial High School, and you're an example of what they are. And we're very proud of the class of 2020 for all you had to go through, and we're excited about you starting at Santa Barbara, and hopefully you'll send us some free passes to some soccer games or something at Santa Barbara so we can join you occasionally. Anyway, I'm very excited about your future, and if you ever need anything, we're here for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Jean?
Yeah, first I want to thank Member Castillo for your service on the school board, representing the interest of your fellow students and your constituents. And I think I've been knowing you for 1.5 years right now, I believe. I think you possess all the qualities that can be expected of anyone at your age. So I wish you good luck in your next chapter of your life at UC Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Member Gutierrez.
First of all, just thank you, Member Castillo, for your year of service. And I do have to echo what's been said, that being a senior, and especially a very active senior like yourself, and then still joining the school board and being on top of the game when it comes to issues here that we're dealing with. It's good to see that students such as yourself are still interested in topics like us, like dealing with, and the process. So thank you for showing that there's still young people interested in this, and thank you for encouraging your the next student following your steps. So I hope that more and more students such as yourself continue to be active. I hope you continue to be active as you are now, and I wish you the best at Santa Barbara. And though you will be starting in a time that is going to be completely different, just take it all in and it as you guys have embraced this school year, which is unprecedented and unprecedented. So definitely wish you the best, and all I can say is the best is yet to come. College is good. Congratulations.
That says for sure it's best to come, I hope. Student member Castillo, it's been a pleasure working with you. the passion that you bring, really sure in who you are and what you stand for. And I think that is admirable. It's admirable that you have put us in line many a time, and rightly so, which is you keep your head straight when there's a lot of chaos. So that is also speaks volumes about you and your temperament and what I think what you're really going to accomplish. So, I am, again, it's been wonderful to get to know you. And I do really wish you the best. I know you're going to represent us and very, very, very well, and make us proud, and continue to encourage and be the role model that you have been for our students. So thank you, Cesar. And now I'll hand it over to you if you'd like to say anything to the entire audience.
Thank you, everyone. It really has been a pleasure working with you for the past 2 years. I do have a lot to say in my concluding comments at the end, so I'll save the majority of it for then. But really, thank you for all the kind words. I really do appreciate it. That's all for now. I'll save it for the end. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And Superintendent Salinas, was that your last?
Yes, that
okay.
Can I just say something to Cesar before we go? There's a tradition at Santa Barbara, since they're the adults, where they throw tortillas on the field if they win a soccer game. So
specifically against San Luis Obispo.
Right, exactly, Cal Poly. So I promise you that I will bring the tortillas if you get me a ticket to get in there for the game.
You're on.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Member Rodriguez. With that, we move to the staff report.
Yes, thank you. And as Mr. Millens brings forward Mr. Dolovich to a panelist position, I want to start off by saying, again, a big thank you to our staff, to our parents, to our community. This has been unprecedented. It's almost to the part where I don't even want to hear that word again, but honestly, it's been tough. But Newark students, Newark community, we are resilient. So tonight, Mr. Dolovich brings forward a discussion, an update, and this is all in preparation for your July special board meeting. Having heard what's happening all over Alameda County, folks are planning for different scenarios and what the school look like for the coming year. What we know for sure is that it's not going to look like what we are used to. So I'm going to ask Mr. Dolovich he's going to share a presentation. There's no vote tonight. It's really more for discussion and to do an update, but knowing that you will have a lot more time to also discuss on July 14th. And so I'll see if he's on here as a panelist.
Point of order, President Martinez, I do have public comment on this item.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. I didn't expect. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. To whom it may concern. Hello, my name is Cindy Plante, and
Ms. Aquino, you're breaking up. Ms. Aquino, can you hear us?
hours assisting my children to get their homework done.
Ms. Aquino, I think you have to start. I think you're going to have to start all over again. We missed a lot of the beginning. My apologies.
Sorry, there are some internet problems this evening. Okay. To whom it may concern. Hello, my name is Cindy Plante, and I'm a parent of a school-age children. With discussions happening regarding how the next school year will look, I feel it's a good time to share my experience. I am 100% for having our kids return to school on a daily basis, and I'll tell you why. It was near impossible to work from home and still spend hours assisting my children to get their homework done. I have many items on my plate as a full-time employee, and I suffered intense stress juggling work and teaching. This did not bode well for both mine and my kids' mental health. With my husband considered an essential worker, I also bore the entire responsibility of being my kids' teacher. If we continue to do distance learning or even a hybrid model, the school district is also putting the responsibility of teaching our kids onto their parents. That's fine if your goal is to become a teacher. However, there are those whose ambition isn't to become one, at least not in an academic setting. This means that our children, teachers are ill-equipped, and the ones who will ultimately suffer are our kids. Furthermore, I was not educated on how to educate a third grader. I didn't know, and still don't, what the expectations are and what she should and shouldn't know. She'll be entering fourth grade in the fall, but is she ready to be one? I believe she is, but again, I'm her parent and not her teacher. And while teaching my younger son was easier, it still took time away from my working and from me helping my daughter. In addition, we all need social interaction. We learn how to function as adults during childhood. Our children need to learn how to deal with people and who are different from them, who may hold opposing viewpoints, who may hold the same viewpoints, who are bullies, who are nice people, and all this cannot be achieved through distance learning. Also, statistics for medical professionals have shown that children are less likely to have severe effects of the virus. I understand there could be carriers and possibly spread the virus to high-risk individuals. However, adults can be responsible enough to keep themselves safe. Are you willing to jeopardize thousands of children's education for something that may happen? Ask for masks. To ask a child to wear this all day is unhealthy. They're essentially breathing in their own carbon monoxide and will have more of a tendency to touch their face, making this a breeding ground for bacteria. Lastly, this work from home combined with distance learning is not sustainable. While I understand you're at the mercy of other agencies, I strongly encourage you to consider options for bringing students back full-time with no distance learning options. And all of these restrictions aren't even going to cure the virus itself. The virus will be around and we will have to adapt around it. If we have to go back to a new normal, so be it. But please, let's bring back as much normalcy as we can to our children. Our future generation deserves it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, and apologize for not asking if there was public comment. Back to you, Superintendent Salinas.
Thank you. And so at this point, I'll have Mr. Dolovich share his screen, and he will share the work of, as you remember, I've shared that we've had several work groups made up of CSEA employees, NTA employees, and certainly our NUMA folk. And also he'll share information around our parent survey that was sent out as well. So thank you, Mr. Dolovich.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, Mr. Castillo. Congratulations. Tonight, I'll be outlining options for reopening schools in the fall. The goals for this presentation include a review of our current situation, influencing factors at both the state and county level, which will impact our decision-making during the summer, discussion of criteria for restarting in-person instruction, an introduction of concepts for flexible or a blended model schedule at the elementary, junior, and high school levels, and identification of critical issues that still require resolution. And finally, an opportunity for board discussion and any clarifying questions as they pertain to the content from tonight's presentation. It deserves noting and acknowledging our colleagues at the Alameda County Office of Education, as well as district and instructional leaders throughout Bay Area districts that have been thought partners and have helped collaborate on some of the content that you'll hear tonight. As you may be aware, during school closure in the spring, Acting Superintendent Ms. Salinas initiated 5 Newark Unified committees in order to prepare and plan for the fall of 2020. The Instructional Planning Committee I led and co-chaired, and it was comprised of 4 design teams: elementary and secondary design teams, a special education design team, and a virtual academy design team, which I'll speak to momentarily. The other 4 committees consisted of a staffing, facilities, policies, and childcare committee. Our current situation and thinking recognizes, just as we've heard the comments and letter from one of our parents, that our families have a wide range of needs and have experienced a multitude of challenges as it pertains to school closure and learning from home 100%. We initiated 2 comprehensive surveys, and we are using the data from these surveys to develop an instructional program that is tailored to the needs of specifically the Newark community. The first survey was one for our Newark Unified staff, and a second survey was provided for our parents and guardians in our community. We've received over 2,600 comments from our Newark Unified parents and guardians, and it's worth noting that this isn't the end of the surveys. We intend in July to provide our parents, guardians, and community an additional survey so that we can get more real-time responses for the fall of 2020. We're also looking at in-person instruction if public health orders permit, as things continue to evolve. It's a very uncertain time, as we all know. And from California Department of Education, aligned with public health officials, there is indication that the best course proceeding, taking into account safety guidelines and conditions in the fall, would include a flexible blended learning model, as well as an online virtual academy, which I will speak to momentarily. And finally, it deserves note that State Superintendent Tony Thurmond mentioned in his remarks that blended learning schedules need to be easily transferable. So as we plan, we need to take into account both remote or distance learning, as well as a blended learning or hybrid model. Why? Because experts predict that school districts throughout the state of California will most likely find themselves in a situation where they will be in more than one model in the upcoming school year. The renowned physician, Dr. Sharfstein from the Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health stated the following, quote, "The question is, how do we create an environment which is as safe as reasonably possible for kids and staff, while respecting the fact that there may be some people that view that amount of risk as too much?" If you look at an overview of the process, currently we are in between bars 2 and 3. We have already convened and continue to meet with strategic planning groups, as mentioned. We've elicited feedback and input from our community and staff, and continue to intend to do so. And then finally tonight, this is the beginning of a board discussion to clarify any of the content presented, and as we grapple with the decision for reopening in the fall. From the Newark Unified Staff Survey, and particularly with our NTA teachers, if you ask them which of the models in terms of reopening schools in the fall with safety precautions in the red, or keeping schools closed and continuing with 100% distance learning, although you can see that 51.3% favored starting opening schools with safety precautions, it's a clear split from this pie chart. And similarly, at the end of the school year, if you asked our staff, do they think that parents would be sending their kids back? Although the majority, 52.1, said that it was somewhat likely that parents would be sending them back, approximately a third of our staff felt that they were not sure, or it was unlikely whether they would actually see families physically sending their kids to school in the fall. When we extended a Google survey to our parents and guardians in both English and Spanish, I like to look at combining both the orange and green bar graphs. And if you look at what parents and guardians reported as either being most comfortable with or preferring in this scenario, clearly the hybrid model or a blended learning model, which I'll speak to, was the winner at the end of the school year. And finally, from the parent and guardian survey, how likely are you to have your child attend next year? You can see from this that both the hybrid or blended learning model, as well as 100% distance learning model, was fairly well received. But it deserves note that out of the respondents, 26% said currently without a vaccine that they would prefer to keep their student in Newark Unified, but have an option for distance learning or remote learning to continue. And so that is a point of interest that we'd like to address as well. The California Department of Education guidelines with respect to returning to school identified 4 pillars: health and hygiene expectations, required face coverings for our students, and we know that's a point of contention, especially for our little ones, physical distancing, 6 feet or more, and a concerted effort to limit gatherings, especially in confined places, and also especially during arrival and dismissal times. NUSD, for this presentation by Ed Services, as we continue to present July 14th and support the board in reaching a conclusion, wants to provide transparency in all aspects. What is ideal versus what is possible with respect to social distancing? We know as time moves on, that can be a challenge for our kindergartners or our first graders. How do we ensure safety first, not only for our students, but for our staff and our families? And finally, when we take into account facilities arrangements, health and hygiene expectations with respect to training our students, onboarding students and families, providing videos and a model of how to make sure that we are maintaining appropriate health and hygiene, along with a cleaning schedule that allows our custodial staff to focus on the essentials, high frequently used areas, and disinfecting between different groups of students arriving on campus. When we look at the possible instructional programming schedules and considerations, there are three. The distance learning, which have just been in for the last 2.5 months, a blended or hybrid learning model, which I'll speak to the nuances and details momentarily, and as mentioned by the parent previously, a full return. At this time, based on the fact that numbers are rising in Alameda County and in other states as well, at the state level, as well as with the county health officials, there is not a recommendation to return to full school, traditional school, as in pre-COVID-19. When we look, however, at the guiding principles, the safeguards I mentioned previously, as well as providing compliance with health department directives, the essential point to emphasize is that there needs to be flexibility between the stages. Again, if we start in a blended learning model, and many experts predict that coinciding with the flu season, there's a very high likelihood that districts will have to return for a period of time to a distance learning model. Are we planning for both? Do we have structures in place that coincide for both distance as well as a blended learning model so that our staff and our students can pivot between one and the other? What we do know is that we are beholden to Alameda County Public Health and that our situation continues to change. And so it's for this reason that many districts, including our own, are preparing and planning for two models. One, a remote learning model. We intend to design a virtual academy. This would be an academy offered for 100% remote or distance learning for families that do not feel comfortable bringing their child back in the fall. A remote learning model would be offered TK through 12, and we would partner with IT to offer online registration and enrollment. And then secondly, a flexible or blended learning model. And a flexible or blended learning model, as stated before, and as I get into the details momentarily, would include an opportunity to return to the socialization that many have pointed out. It would allow in-person instruction, but it would combine synchronous and asynchronous learning, which I'll speak to in an upcoming slide. And one point that deserves to be mentioned is that with the blended learning model, we can move again into remote. The same protected days for staff development, for staff meetings would be the same for a flexible model as they would be for a remote model. What is blended learning? Briefly, it's a combination or a blend between online learning as we experience with distance learning, which would include asynchronous opportunities, assignments, projects, homework, emails. That would be an example of asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning, as we know, would be learning in real time. That can still happen in a live chat, but it would also happen in this model with in-person instruction for our students and our staff. Blended learning in many ways allows us to reimagine education. And we know the landscape, even prior to COVID-19, was vastly changing, especially with respect to Bay Area economy, as well as technologies. And in some ways, this has allowed us to redesign our approach for the well-being of our students and our staff in Newark. We want to continue to build on that. How do we make learning more personalized? How do we move towards a graduate profile of Newark Memorial High School students that emphasize 21st century skills? Presentations, discussions, internships, opportunities such as these can occur within a blended learning model, and we would ask to rethink how we approach our vision. What does this mean for next year? We know that on August 13th, school will start regardless. We want students to build agency, have choice, and we want to emphasize the following. Teaching and learning will not be optional. We want to be creative with assessments. We want to provide assessments for students. And even though we pivoted during school closures to a temporary grading policy, we want to be clear that we want to return to traditional grades. We want, for college admissions purposes, to support our high school students. And we want students to receive timely and meaningful feedback, as well as grades, TK through 12. In terms of an overview for stages of implementation, I did note the three: 100% return to traditional based on our current conditions and the number of cases specific to Alameda County seems completely unlikely. And therefore it leaves us with two: a remote or distance learning, continuing with what we were in at the end of the school year, as well as a flexible or blended learning AB model, which I'll speak to. Both the remote and flexible learning model that we are designing allows for flexibility with moving in and between the two. For examples with A and B, I want to be clear that what I'm going to present tonight is just an example. We completed yesterday a 2-hour work session with the instructional committee, comprised of the 4 design teams I mentioned earlier, and they were unequivocal and clear in recommending that Monday is a protected day. One of the rationales for Monday being a protected day is that most school holidays occur on a Monday, and therefore it minimizes lost instruction. Another factor is that many parents and guardians cited in their survey that they wanted clear, concise, accessible activities, assignments, and lessons from teachers at the start of the week. And this would allow teachers to provide a weekly template aligned with common language, TK through 12, to our families, so that when asynchronous learning occurs on Monday or the day the student or child does not attend, that the parents and guardians know what assignments and what is expected of them. For a 2-day rotation blend recommended by California Department of Education, this includes 2 groups of students, a group A and a group B. So in a Monday protected day, group A would occur Tuesday and Thursday, and group B would occur Wednesday and Friday. On Mondays, all students would receive the weekly template I mentioned, and then teachers would attend meetings, collaborative planning opportunities, staff meetings, and professional development opportunities. Another important consideration, as we know, both for our student and our staff, is to emphasize student-teacher relationships. When we talk about reimagining schools, we know at the forefront for professional development that we need to support our staff and provide training with social and emotional learning, as well as mental health. Just as our staff and adults have been affected by the pandemic and school closures, a disproportionate number of our students have also been affected, and we need to prioritize their mental health as well. When we look at an example of a flexible elementary schedule, again, before you, I want to note a few things. One, this is just an example. The recommended schedule by the Instructional Planning Committee includes Monday as the asynchronous time. On this schedule, you see the Wednesday, and like mentioned, Group A would be Tuesday and Thursday, and Group B would be Wednesday and Friday. The secondary schools would also be aligned with such a model. What does this allow? It allows fewer students on campus at any given time. It also allows for our custodial staff to sanitize and provide thorough cleaning. And then the students have expectations and information each Monday during the start of a window, 8:30 to 9 a.m. when they receive a weekly template, so that they understand and families understand what assignments are expected of them. When we look at examples of C and D specifically, and I'll talk momentarily about staggered schedules and also about secondary, still debating between a reduced course load, specifically 3 courses versus a traditional 6-course model. One thing that deserves to be noted is that secondary is still discussing. The other thing that deserves mention is that the state has not yet sent out concrete guidelines for instructional minutes or attendance. So what that means is we can design a bell schedule, but we do not have the exact instructional minutes required in front of us. What would an earlier staggered schedule look like throughout our schools? For example, grades TK, Kinder, and 1 may arrive at 8 a.m., whereas grades 2 and 3 arrive at 8:30, and then grades 4, 5, and 6 arrive at 9 a.m., and likewise, dismissal times would also be staggered. For the junior high, grade 7 may arrive at 8 a.m., and grade 8 would arrive at 8:30. And then at the high school level, with a staggered schedule, grades 9 and 10 could arrive at 8 a.m., and grades 11 and 12 would arrive at 8:30. And then in all 3 scenarios, a staggered dismissal time would occur. This addresses the limiting of gatherings recommended by state health officials. With respect to a reduced course load, this is an opportunity as a possibility that many districts are exploring. There are advantages and disadvantages with each. One of the advantages, and I'll show you a flexible secondary schedule with a 3-course rotation for high school students. One of the advantages is that if we did go to distance learning based on conditions within the state, that students and staff, and students primarily, would have to only manage 3 courses, and thereby it would lessen anxiety that has been reported. Also, it would minimize transition time and the number of students on campus at any one given time. A disadvantage would be, for example, the transition overall from 6 to 3 that students are not used to, and also for students taking AP courses. AP courses that are taken in the first semester, students would need an academy, an AP academy, in order to provide them an opportunity to sufficiently prepare for the AP exam, which is offered in the spring. And so, similar to the elementary, there would be a template where families and students receive their weekly expectations, so there's more clarity and consistency. And we want to use common language, especially for our families with multiple students. And then, of course, the protected day would not be Wednesday. The recommended day from our instructional planning committee is, in fact, Monday. The facilities committee, as well as the staffing committee, I'm going to briefly represent them and what they have shared. Their focus is on installation of plexiglass in front offices, maintaining 6 feet of physical distancing in classrooms and all spaces on campus, including furniture layout, postage signage, and installation of barriers to direct traffic around campus, to provide more washing stations and hand sanitizer dispensers and PPE, limit access as appropriate to campus for parents and visitors, and clean and sanitize frequently, including high used areas such as desks, door handles, restrooms, and playground equipment. Our HR and staffing committee, headed by Ms. Saavedra, is in charge of making recommendations to the district about best practices on the reopening of schools in the fall. Their primary focus areas are safety and fair labor. And the staffing committee plans for worksite safety plans to be developed and a policy review specifically of teleworking and MOUs, safety protocols, which include cleaning, sanitation plan, and then for staffing and agreements and assignments to follow CTC guidelines. So that is what I hope is a concise update, but I want to now pause as we've reached the conclusion of the reopening schools initial presentation and provide an opportunity for board to ask questions or make any comments related to this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dolowich. I think you did a great job. I know that there was quite a bit of slides, quite a bit of materials to go through, so thank you very much for going through that. I will open it up to other board members if they have any questions or comments.
I'm just glad that we're returning to normal grading for next semester.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think our students and our community deserve it.
I did have a question. Thank you, President Martinez. Mr. Dolowich, as I looked at your slide and you were just you were distinguishing the two groups from first through third graders. Sorry, K through third, and then 4 through 6. How they would be separated in the schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, so even though the CDE guidelines that you're referring to include TK through 2, 3 through 6, and so forth, when we look at the staggered arrival time or the staggered dismissal time, it makes sense for us to break elementary into 3 separate groups to minimize the gatherings. So I think to your point, I was speaking TK, K, and 1 being a group, grades 2 and 3 being a separate group, and then grades 4, 5, and 6 being a third group. So we take into account the minimizing the gatherings that the health officials have recommended.
Okay, because then I was looking at the example schedules where you had group A and group B, like that. Yeah, I know you have 2 of those, but for the one right before. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that one. Yes. So, for example, that one. So, are we saying if you're part of Group A, you would be between K and third grade, and Group B would be 4 through 6?
So, good question. So, it actually, with the elementary model, we would split up the arrival and dismissal times by grade level only. And for elementary, A and B would be on separate days. So A would be Tuesday, Thursday, and then B would be Wednesday, Friday. So A and B actually wouldn't experience any overlap.
Correct. And I guess where I'm going at, because in this scenario, this flexible schedule here, we have both groups going the same day. And then you have the other one where it's staggering in days. My question is just to confirm if Group A still remains K through 3 and Group B 4 through 6. Because my question was, if we have a scenario where we have siblings, where one's a lower grader and a sibling in the upper grader, and I'm thinking of going to class and these siblings who walk together, and now it would require the either or to be walking by themselves, or let's say in the younger scenario, the younger child, somebody drop them off. So I just wanted to confirm if that's what we're looking at, where it could potentially be siblings being split up on their schedule.
What we'd like to do with Synergy, we can run a query where we assign siblings the same group. And so,
okay.
So I think let me ask a question, because I think we're in the weeds right now. And I know that we have a meeting coming up in July, right? So I think we just want to be careful that we're not looking for the for the final decision. I think maybe it's a consideration. I think that we're asking about, because this is an example of how we are, the work groups are thinking, but we haven't landed on anything, or have we, Mr. Dolowich, in terms of those groups?
That's correct. This is simply informational and discussion purposes, and secondary is still going to meet next Wednesday, June 24th. I would say the elementary has reached unanimous consensus around, as mentioned before, the protected Monday and the Group A, Group B occurring on the Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday model. That's their recommendation, but ultimately we can absolutely provide any information you need, and it's obviously up to the board to vote and decide.
Gotcha. I think that's a great point, though. I mean, I'm sure you all are considering a ton of different possible dimensions and impacts, and whether the parents are working or not. But I think that's a great point. I mean, I certainly hadn't thought about it in terms of just, if they're going to the same school, it would just now potentially be different days.
And we're hearing from colleagues in other districts. One district in particular may start 100% distance learning. And I know there's concern in that community, especially if the flu season does not allow them to return in a blended learning model. And then we've also partnered with districts where they're doing the Group A and Group B in the same day, where it's an AM-PM model. But that puts a lot on our custodial staff and also brings up the question of sanitation and cleanliness.
So then I guess
I have-
my next question would be is, how in-depth should our questions should be? Because I know I did send a couple of questions to Ms. Salinas in regards to what are we looking at for masks? What are we looking at for sanitation purposes? Children, how are children going to be interacting? And I know that they could be almost tedious, but I know they're also very important for the dynamics and the everyday. Should I reserve those questions for the following meeting, or is it something that can be addressed now? It can be addressed in a memo. How should we proceed on that aspect?
I'm fine responding to any questions. I think the nuances and the specificity are necessary, especially as we talk about the reopening. But I only lead the instructional planning, not necessarily facilities or HR with respect to classified. So I would defer to Ms. Saavedra or Ms. De La Cruz.
And I can share, this is, I know our screen's not, this is Letty Salinas. I think if we can hear just the considerations for us to, hey, please be mindful about splitting families. Another consideration is masks for students that are 5 years old. Are you considering that? I think Mr. Dolovich will give as much information as he can now, but I think we all know it could change tomorrow. I mean, having seen what's in the news today about Beijing. And so we are just, I think, please keep sending us the information. I did get your email today, and I will share that with the work groups as well, that we have to have a lot of considerations.
I had a question.
And so just so I can finalize my topic, because I know there's a lot of questions, and again, it's not just me, the community has them. And it's more, again, I'll just probably just throw them out there to be kept for consideration, and they can be addressed at a later time. In regards to masks, what are lunches and recess, what are they going to look like? Is there outside classrooms being held majority of the time outside? Is that an option? Again, the cleanliness of or the sanitation aspects of what that's going to look like, where the children playing in the playground, the children going to the bathroom, then children exiting the classrooms. And then the other question that I had was, you mentioned the virtual academy. If we do go back to even a hybrid model come next school year, is that online option going to be available anyway to people who do not want to, parents who do not want to send their children back?
So I'll start with your last question first. Yes. So the virtual academy would be offered to everyone TK through 12, with families expressing, again, 26% they don't feel comfortable with their student physically returning. So we think that's a baseline necessity to offer all of our families, because they want to stay with NUSD. And especially if there is a vaccine, for instance, developed, then they may return to a blended learning model. So we want to honor their lack of comfortability. With respect to enter and exiting, so that would be the rationale with respect to staggered arrival and dismissal times. And that is also an advantage of the 3-course model. So with the 3-course model at the secondary level, obviously they're transitioning and they're going in and out of classrooms less. The other thing to say is there needs to be training and onboarding both for our students and our family that include videos, because when you look at those 4 pillars, when CDE drills down in their plans, they're talking about training staff, training students consistently to have students wash their hands, to do all of the health and safety guidelines that are required with respect to the not spreading the virus. Outdoor instruction, that's a fantastic point. That is absolutely a point of emphasis. It would be wonderful to have sites, principals in coordination with facilities, identify areas of instruction. I know in Southern California, they asked for, I was on a webinar, they asked for families to donate towels, and then they used towels as a place to sit on outside for outdoor instruction, minimizing purchasing outdoor furniture. That was for the little ones, of course. But what we do know from a health and safety standpoint is that outdoor instruction is absolutely recommended. And for the schools that I know have committed to opening in a blended learning model, outdoor instruction is front and center with respect to instruction. Lunches, we want to emphasize the importance of meal distribution. We know Child and Nutrition and Mary Sayers have done outstanding work, and we want to factor in a way for lunches. There are different models out there. It would be very difficult for lunches to be distributed to classrooms. That's one option to minimize students going outdoors. The other way, we don't know the number of instructional minutes established by the state just yet. However, there's a possibility that they could complete their learning physically, whether they're in a group A or group B, receive their lunch, and then go home.
Mr. Dolowich, I'm sorry, I'm going to, yeah. So I know, Member Rodriguez, you've been patiently waiting. So I think I'm going to provide some guidance here because we could get, we're at the 30-minute mark, and I know there's a ton of questions, but these are still potential scenarios. I know that there is a lot of work that our committees are putting together to bring us a bit more solid answers. So I would like to open up to the rest of the board members to ask any questions and things that we want to make sure are being considered. Again, if there's any quick answers, of course, that you can provide guidelines very quickly, that would be great. But I don't think the intent of this report out was because we just don't know, right? So let's make sure we've got a lot of that input from the board, you know, and I'm sure you're hearing it from parents and other staff members. So with that, I'll stop talking. Member Rodriguez, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Delowich, for the presentation. And, you know, we can have this session every day of the week and still have questions. So when we talk about flexible, so if parents choose one and it's not working for them, then flexible means that they can choose, you know, move that to another one. Is that what you're thinking, or are you thinking flexible completely different than what I'm thinking?
I'm thinking offering both for our families, so that there's a virtual academy if they're not comfortable with returning in the fall, and there's also a blended learning model.
Right. So if they choose one, they can exit and then choose another one, and then if they don't like that, they can exit and come back to the other one.
Yeah, and I think that this is Letty. That'll be something to consider, and so definitely we're writing it down because we also have to be mindful that we also have staff that we can't interchange them so quickly, so we have to be aware of that. But definitely, we're writing it down as a consideration of how.
And then my other question is the assessment piece. You know, with the virtual learning, some kids are right on and they stay on course, and other kids are falling behind. So if you have a third grader, rather than having that third grader do third grade over again, there's got to be a piece where that young student is given a chance to catch up because they fell behind because of virtual learning. That's what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. The assessment piece has to be ongoing, in my opinion, where before the assessment was done maybe in October. Now it seems that assessment has to be ongoing. So hopefully you're putting a lot of time into the assessment piece.
Thank you.
Definitely noted. And the last thing, just to mention about the Group A and Group B, is that it pertains to all grade levels. So that we're trying to take a common, consistent approach, TK through 12.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Wynn, I'm sorry, you're not on my screen there, so I'm not sure if you had any questions or comments or.
No, I just wanted to thank Mr. Dolowich. My questions came in yesterday and he actually integrated it with his presentation tonight. So I just wanted to say thank you and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. No problem. Thank you.
I do have a question about the presentation. Not something that needs to be answered right now. Mr. Dolowich, if I understood you correctly earlier in one of your answers, you mentioned that the committee dedicated to secondary schools would be meeting next week. Is that correct?
Correct. June 24th with Ms. Rangel.
Okay. So then I just wanted to raise the point that with regards to if that option D is is the one that gets adopted. And I know you guys will bring others to the table, but if you adopt like a block schedule type thing where it's 3 courses in the fall and 3 courses in the spring, my concern would be around AP courses and honors courses that take a full year to teach, and how that's condensed into 1 semester. Even over the 2 or so months that people were out of the classroom and preparing for AP exams this year, which themselves were very different than what is normal. My concern would just be that students might get left behind or fall behind if this learning model is adopted and they don't get the same attention that they would normally get in the classroom where they're being supported 100% of the time. So I hope that that's something that gets addressed in next week's meeting, because it is something that is going to affect a large proportion of the high school community specifically, regardless of what occurs next year.
And I think that's one of the reasons they're meeting again next week, is because they themselves are split when it comes to a traditional 6-course model or a 3-course model because of that point.
Yeah. Thank you, Student Member Castillo. And again, Mr. Dolowich and Ms. Salinas, we recognize that this is got so many moving parts, and I've attended a couple local leadership meetings. I think every district is really grappling with this. So I think what I just tell not only staff but all of our community stakeholders that I think we're confident that we're going to come up with the best solutions. It may not make everybody happy, but if we keep our kids at the core of what's most important, of course, considering the health and safety of our employees, we're going to I know we're going to do the best we can, and let's make sure we just continue to have all the voices represented. I know that that's always a question, making sure that our teachers are heard, our classified are heard, and certainly our parents and other stakeholders. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And we do look forward to the July meeting. I'm sure we're gonna, in the meantime, I do encourage everyone listening, of course, please, reach out, submit questions. I know that Mr. Olowich, you did an amazing job at answering some of the board members' questions, in one day. So we know we're gonna throw a lot at you, but I'd rather make sure you have as much lead time that, where you can bring into those considerations into the discussion. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Salinas, that concludes this report.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and with that, we move to item 10, employee organizations. Ms. Aquino, do we have any comments?
We do not, President Martinez.
Okay. Sorry, I'm opening I have 2 computers. I don't have my connected to my other screen. Okay, and with that, we move to item 11, public hearings. And I don't have a little gavel to open the public hearing, but with that, we do open public hearing 11.1 on the 2020-21 budget. Ms. Aquino, do we have any speaker cards on this for the public hearing?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Item 11.1, public hearing. Hello, my name is Amanda Chigoa. I hope I said that okay. And I am a parent of 2 girls, one at BGI and one at BGP. I reviewed the proposed budget, and I'm wondering if you can please elaborate on why the insurance line item under service is doubling for this coming year, page 30. Additionally, can you please clarify where specialized cleaning supplies and cleaning services to ensure the health and safety of students and staff is being funded within this budget? It appears operations and housekeeping services is being cut per page 30, but I'm wondering if there's a separate line item for the additional work that COVID prevention will entail somewhere else. Finally, is there any line item that is funding remote learning software or platforms, since the parent survey link indicated that Newark Unified is considering partial or even full remote learning for next year? Thank you, Amanda Chigoa.
Sorry, did you say there was one more, Ms. Aquino? Or just the one? Sorry, I apologize.
My apologies, just the one.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. That was, I just heard you wrong. So the staff will be bringing this this topic later in the meeting. Ms. Salinas, with this
So you can go ahead and close the public hearing if there's no others, and then we'll move on.
and then we'll address it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, if there's no other comments, we will close this public hearing. Thank you. And with that, we move to item 12, new business. And with that, we bring to you, the superintendent contract. Earlier, we reported out of closed session that the board unanimously voted to appoint Mark Triplett as our new superintendent. So the recommendation that requires board action is that the board recommends that we ratify the contract for Mark Triplett to serve as our superintendent. And before we actually go ahead and make a motion to approve, there is a requirement that we actually, per code, that we summarize the superintendent's agreement. So I will read verbatim as this was prepared by our attorney. So again, tonight, the board is considering the approval of a new employment agreement with Mark Triplett to serve as a district superintendent. Government Code Section 54953 states, in pertinent part, prior to taking final action, the legislative body shall orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive during the open meeting in which the final action is to be taken. So as a result, I'm providing you the following verbal summary of the superintendent's agreement. The parties are entering into a 3-year agreement effective July 2nd, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Base salary is $220,000, which shall increase annually by 2%, commencing the 2022-23 school year upon receipt of a satisfactory annual written evaluation. The superintendent is eligible to participate in the district's health and welfare benefits on the same terms and conditions as certificated administrators. The work year will be 225 days, and the superintendent is entitled to 12 sick days per year. Reimbursement will be provided for all actual, necessary, and reasonable expenses, as well as up to $5,000 in the first year of the agreement and $2,500 thereafter for professional growth activities. So that is the summary of the agreement. So I'm trying to get the verbiage right here. So at this point, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the contract between Mark Triplett and Newark Unified.
I'll make the motion.
Member Gutierrez makes the motion. I have a second.
A second.
Member Nguyen seconds. Any questions, comments, or any discussion?
I have one.
Sure, sir.
In the past, it's been a requirement, from my understanding, that a administrator be part of the vision and dental, as just like everyone else is, and also be required to have health insurance, not necessarily with us, but at least provide us proof that they have health insurance. And that's my question. I don't know if that's addressed in the contract or not.
I'm not sure if you had a chance to read it. It's basically, it's verbatim. We have applied the same verbiage that we have for certificated.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments, Ms. Aquino, can you repeat the motion, please?
Apologies. Motion is to appoint Mark Triplett as Superintendent of Newark Unified School District. Motion made by Member Gutierrez, seconded by Member Nguyen.
Thank you, Ms. Aquino. Ms. Gutierrez? Oh, yep,
Yes,
sorry.
President Martinez, sorry, just to clarify, and I apologize, Ms. Aquino, if it was, if I misheard you. I just wanted to confirm if it was to appoint Mr. Triplett or if it was to confirm the contract.
Confirm the contract, sorry.
My apologies, is to confirm the contract, please. My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Mhm.
And back to you, Ms. Martinez.
Sorry, so let me backtrack here. So thank you for the correction. So with the corrected motion to approve the contract, motion made by Member Gutierrez, seconded by Member Nguyen. Member Gutierrez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Aye.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
And my vote is yes as well. So we approve Mr. Triplett's contract unanimously. Thank you. And Ms. Aquino, I think we were going to invite him.
Ms. President Martinez, he's already on.
He's
Oh,
here.
okay. Sorry, I can't see. There we go. There you are. Hello, Mr. Triplett.
Hi.
Well, before I introduce you, or before I let you introduce yourself, I wanted to just do a quick introduction to our community. So I'm going to read it because I'm trying to be a bit more organized. It is with great pleasure that we introduce Mr. Mark Triplett as the new superintendent of our wonderful Newark Unified School District. Mark comes to us from Oakland Unified, where he has spent the last 4 years serving as network superintendent of middle schools, helping them drive significant improvement in academic performance. He holds a master's in education, a specialist degree, and doctorate in educational leadership. Mark impressed us with his history of building successful partnerships, not only with his own teams, but also with the broader community, including the business community. He also spoke passionately and very credibly through his work about his commitment to educational equity for all of our students. And before I hand that back still to you, Mark, I'm going to say this in Spanish. I'm hoping that we've got some of our Spanish-speaking community on, and I want you them to get to know you as well. Es un placer presentarles al señor Mark Triplett como el nuevo superintendente de nuestras querido Distrito Escolar de Newark. Mark nos llega del Distrito Escolar de Oakland, donde ha servido como superintendente de las escuelas secundarias estos últimos 4 años. Estando allí, les ayudó a mejorar su desempeño académico. Mark tiene una maestría en educación, especialidad en administración y un doctorado en liderazgo educacional. Mark nos impresionó con su exitosa historia en la creación de equipos exitosos, no nada más con su equipo interno, sino también con la comunidad y la comunidad empresarial. A través de su trabajo, él también habló sobre su compromiso de proveer una educación equitativa para todos nuestros estudiantes. Bienvenido, Mark. Welcome, Mark. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Muchas gracias, Presidente Martínez. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Mark Triplett y estoy muy emocionado de aceptar el papel de superintendente del Distrito Unificado. So good evening, President Martinez, members of the board, staff and community. My name is Mark Triplett. It's an honor and a privilege to be selected to serve as your next superintendent. I'm delighted to join the district, a district with so much potential and one that really feels like it's poised to be the most stellar and sought after district in the Bay Area. So I'd love to just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a product of public schools. I grew up in a
Oh, here, Mark, you froze.
small town on the East Coast. Oh, am I still frozen?
No, we heard you, small town East Coast.
I was saying, and I've spent life still frozen.
Yeah. I think we're, yes. We'll give it one more shot. If not, we'll definitely create the opportunity for you to introduce yourself.
Let's see. How about now? There we go. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah. Let's see if
Yes.
Emma.
All right, we'll give it a try. I just switched over to my phone hotspot.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was saying I've dedicated my adult life to urban education, and in particular, fighting for equity for students who have traditionally been underserved by our school system and our system in general. So I come with a belief that every child is capable of greatness, and it's really up to us to make sure that we create the conditions for that to happen. My wife and I have 2 teenage daughters. We live here in the East Bay, been here for 13 years in the East Bay. One daughter who is just entering high school, and the other who is going to be a senior this year in high school. And I appreciated listening tonight. I appreciated hearing the plans that are being laid in place for the fall. We're in such tremendous upheaval and crisis as a country right now, and this has really been brought on by not just the pandemic, but the centuries of systemic racism that we've experienced. And these challenges are not going to go away. And so I'm really hopeful and actually excited to be taking on this work with you all. I know we got a lot of hard work ahead, and we got a lot of difficult decisions to make, but I'm really confident that together we can emerge from this stronger and better positioned to serve the students and families of Newark. And just a little bit about why I was interested in coming to Newark Unified. I've just been struck by the community and the diversity and the dedication and commitment of the staff. And I hear it tonight, and I've seen it. I've been watching many board meetings and doing a lot of research, and I can really see that. So I just want to end with an appreciation. These last 3 to 4 months, the real heroes, I think, of this time have been the staff of school districts, in particular of Newark Unified. And I just think about the custodians, the food service folks, the admin assistants, office staff, aides, and of course the teachers and administrators and central office folks who have been there to support our families and our students in such unusual times. And I'm really looking forward to jumping in and doing the work with you. And so I look forward to seeing you all in July.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was much, that hotspot work. It's been saving us, right? Remember when? We had a power outage earlier here, and some of our members were affected. So thank you. Apologize if you guys can hear my dog barking in the background. So again, thank you, Mark. And you're welcome to stay on and listen, of course, to the rest of the meeting.
Great, thank you.
Can I interject just for a second?
Oh, sure, sorry.
Thank you, President Martinez. The most important thing that we do as a board, in my opinion, is hiring our superintendent. who's going to be the next leader of our school district and of our school community. And the process is a long one. And Mr. Triplett, you know, checked all the right boxes and did very well in his interview. And it was a tough choice for us, but nevertheless, one that we made. And my hope is that, and I know he will, he'll make us proud. And welcome to Newark, Mr. Triplett. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Okay, with that, we move to item 12.2, Superintendent Salinas, appointment of Principal Kennedy Elementary.
Yes, good evening. I'll have Ms. Saavedra introduce this and share our candidate coming forward.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Board of Education and stakeholders watching us tonight. It is with great pleasure that staff would like to recommend Jaime Soria as the principal of Kennedy Elementary. Jaime comes to Newark from Foster City, where he worked as a principal of a TK6 elementary school of 800 students. Prior to Foster City, he was an assistant principal in Milpitas Unified School District for 5 years. He's looking forward to leading the school and supporting students' needs through targeted interventions and balancing the school with fun and engaging enrichment opportunities to enhance student learning. Tonight, staff would like to recommend Jaime Soria as principal of Kennedy Elementary.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the recommended action?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Member Rodriguez moves. Member Nguyen seconds. Questions or discussion?
I just wanted to give thanks to the team, Ms. Saavedra and everybody, Ms. Salinas and everybody else involved. Thank you for informing us of the process you guys followed, and that's it. Thank you.
I'd like to echo that. Whether it's the superintendent or the principal at the high school and now the principal at Kennedy, we have people that serve on committees, and we're very thankful to everyone that puts himself out there and to assist us in making the right decision on who's going to be our leaders.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, Ms. Aquino, may you please repeat the motion?
Staff recommends a motion to appoint Jaime Soria as principal of Kennedy Elementary. Motion made by Member Rodriguez, seconded by Member Nguyen.
Thank you, Ms. Aquino. Member Zhang, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
And my vote is a yes as well, so the motion carries with 5 ayes. Thank you very much. Will we be introducing Mr. Soria? Sorry, I said it.
Mr. Soria will be joining us at the July 14 board meeting for an introduction, a formal introduction.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we move to item 12.3, which is the proposal from Impact Science and Education.
Can I say something real quick? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to exit. It's a 3-hour time difference, and it's almost midnight here.
Okay.
And this is my second meeting with the RP, so I've been going for the last 6 hours. So I appreciate all of you and the love you have for us, for our students and our community. With that, I'll exit. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Get some rest.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I will hand it to you, Ms. Salinas.
Yes, for this item, this is a proposal for Impact Science Education. As you may recall, at our last board meeting, we had
I'm sorry for interrupting. Ms. Aquino, do we have a speaker card for this item?
but you're welcome to make your motion and second, and then I'll read it into the record.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for keeping me in check. Okay, before we get started, may I have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation to purchase Impact Science?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Member Gutierrez moves, Member Nguyen seconds. Okay, so sorry. Now, do we have any comments? Any comment cards?
We do. There is one. 12.3 proposal from Impact Science Education. Board members, I appreciate the information provided at the last meeting concerning the science pilot. However, at the conclusion of the presentation, the board took a vote to adopt the science program. The agenda item was titled Newark Junior High School Science Pilot, not Science Adoption. This agenda item says proposal from Impact Science Education, Inc. for NJHS. Why proposal and not contract? I believe $72,000 contract is beyond anyone's approval limit. The board should be approving the actual contract. During the presentation's last meeting, some of the staff comments alluded to additional expenses. Where is the breakdown of lab materials and costs? It is also my understanding there will be the need for photocopies and/or supplemental materials. How much will that cost? Finally, what arrangements have been made to ensure compliance with the Williams Act? On the California Department of Education FAQ page for the Williams Act, it states, in order to meet the definition of sufficient instructional materials, students need to have access to the materials both at school and at home. This presumes that students with web-based materials have access to an appropriate device and the internet in school and at home, and students with electronic textbooks have access to the device in school and at home. Please consider the legality of the vote from the previous meeting, the lack of contract and the lack of full disclosure concerning the cost when you consider this item. Thank you, Cindy Parks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight we bring forward the item proposal for Impact Science Education. And so a little bit about it. As you recall, at our last board meeting, we had our science department chair and some of our staff present the process that our staff went through for the year. And that was around the piloting and the process, the certainly input from parents and input from students really, I think, reflected the rich, deep process that they took part in. The proposal that was given to you last time where you voted to accept the recommendation is the recommended action was that the board accept the curriculum recommendation, and that was part of your motion. And so that's why today we come back with the actual quote. Now, if you recall, when we brought back the Big Ideas Math adoption process, at that point, what we bring forward is a quote. There is no contract because this is a curriculum purchase. So we won't be seeing the regular kinds of contracts that we see. This is actually a purchase of curriculum, and that's what we have forward is the quote that outlines how many licenses per grade level. I do want to add is, yes, our staff shared, and part of our work is with science. The wonderfulness about science is that it's a lot of hands-on. And so part of that is that we do have a consumable budget that is already encumbered and set aside, just as we do with the elementary science FOSS kits and just as we do at the high school. So right now we have an approximation of $17,000 for the first year. And what that speaks to is certainly the microscopes and some of the replenishment that we have to do. In addition will be live specimens, baking soda, you name it. But this is part of the educational services budget that is set aside. In terms, I do want to make sure that you are aware we will be Williams compliant. As we're doing this deep work, as you heard from Ariel, we have looked at the need of Chromebooks and how many Chromebooks we actually have. So we are envisioning, part of our work is that we have enough Chromebooks right now as we're working with our new IT manager to do the one-to-one as we go into the hybrid or full distance learning. So students will have full access to the curriculum, and as we start to continue to plan for this work, please know that those funds have been set aside as really the expenses that we do each and every year through educational services. So this evening, we also bring forward the planning that our teachers at this point are planning for both scenarios. We envision that we don't want to purchase everything now because depending on the decision in July, we will see how that money can also be targeted towards graphics and photocopies that may need to be made. So we've got the bases covered there. I think our science department did a great job of this planning with Ms. Repsura as well. And so tonight we bring forward this recommendation for this 8-year license for new NGSS aligned curriculum for our junior high school students.
Very good, thank you. I know that I missed the last meeting. I know there was quite a bit of discussion in the curriculum was approved, but with regards to the approval of the purchase, are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I actually just want to clarify something that I think many people in our community are a little bit confused. So I think there was some confusion of wording last night about this is adoption or this is a pilot program. So the pilot program was actually run last year, so it's already done. This is actually voting on the adoption of the science program, impact science program.
This vote is actually voting on the purchase of the new adoption. At the last board meeting, after you heard about the pilot, the recommended vote was to accept the recommendation of the impact science as the new adoption.
So again, to clarify, you're right, it's no longer a pilot. It was adopted as the new curriculum. Now we are actually approving the funds, if you will, to support the new adoption. Okay. Thank you for clarifying, Member Jean.
I have a question for Superintendent Salinas. So Superintendent Salinas, you mentioned something about not making a full purchase that is contingent on what secondary option is selected at the July meeting, because the dollar amount for this quote is $72,000. I just wanted to clarify what would happen there, or just ask you to clarify what you said earlier.
Sure, I apologize. Where we're waiting a little bit is on the actual consumables, and so that's the additional funds. So our teachers will be able to make a decision if they buy live specimens, but probably not until the spring of next year, versus maybe they want to use those funds for more copying or other consumable packets. But this $72,000 is for the actual adoption. I'm talking about the supplemental funds.
Right, so then a separate quote will have to be presented and approved for the consumable items, is that correct?
No, that is our actual regular purchase, because that is under the threshold. So it'll be like, baking soda and open purchase orders as we do with our IMC.
Okay, I understand. And then another concern, a member of the community mentioned that the Williams compliance was not presented. Is that something that the board is required to present when when we adopt a new curriculum, or how does that work? Because I'm
sure. Go ahead.
Because I am slightly of the understanding there. It seems logical to me that something of that nature would be provided in this agenda item as well.
Yes, so it is Williams compliant in the sense that every student will have a Chromebook to be able to access their the curriculum.
President Martinez, I just wanted to add thanks to Ms. Salinas, because in your summary of the topic, you answered a lot of my questions. So thank you very much for that.
Member Nguyen?
In terms of the Williams compliance, is there a part of the Williams compliance where it has to do with evaluation that we have to meet in terms of evaluation process for a pilot program?
No, so the Williams compliance is essentially three things: is that our teachers appropriately credentialed, our facilities in working order, and textbooks. And so what happens in the fall, and I don't know how the county will do it this year, is that they will select at random schools to be inspected. They come through and they make sure that every student has one textbook for use at home and in the classroom. And so what my point was that as CDE has evolved with the work that we're doing in our schools, they recognize that a lot of districts are moving more towards online. So we are compliant in the sense that we have a license per student, and we're compliant in the sense that students have access to the Chromebook.
And then lastly, I know that there is misunderstanding between quotes and contracts. So can you please clarify in terms of why it is okay for us to be accepting or approving upon a quote versus a contract?
Right. And I'm not to put on her spot, I know I spoke with Ms. Dela Cruz, and if she could also help me answer this and see if I answered it correctly. Ms. Dela Cruz?
I'm sorry, Member Nguyen, could you please repeat your question?
So I know in IT, we get a lot of quotes and we get approved based on the quote. And then once it's approved and once it's purchased, then you guys pay off of the invoice. But I know that in our community, there is misunderstanding or concern between what is meant by us as a board approving on a quote versus us approving on a contract. So we want just clarification so that we are doing the right thing and that there's no questions in terms of the approval of this this quote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, part of our normal purchasing process, usually our vendors provide us a quote. So by you approving that quote, then it gives us the authority to go ahead and process the requisition, which will then turn into a purchase order, which ends up being the official contract. So before we can even submit a requisition or process a PO, we need approval for the quote. So that's how it all falls together.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So my remaining question is, when we vote on the subsequent, when the subsequent purchase come in, what item will that be under?
You won't, I think, are you talking about the ratification of the requisitions?
No, I think like this is today the 72,000, that's the licensing fee, right? The cost of the adoption.
Yes.
And once you set the live specimen and the powder and all the other consumables,
yeah,
that will be under what item or no item at all?
You won't see those because it is literally many purchase recs. So for example, I can say, frogs for dissection may cost $200. So you won't see that here. You will see it in our requisitions though, as those come to the board. I think it's each month, but you won't see the actual each purchase. You won't see those.
Yeah, that will be under the consent calendar.
The requisitions, yes.
Okay.
The ratification, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Good. So with that, Ms. Aquino, are you still on? Not sure if you're, I know it's been a long day for you as well. Can you please repeat the motion on the table, please?
I can, sorry. Oh, I jumped ahead, my apologies. Okay. Motion to approve the proposal of Impact Science Education Incorporated. Motion made by Member Gutierrez, seconded by Member Nguyen. Member Rodriguez had to exit at 8:52.
Very good, thank you for that. Student Member Castillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Jean?
Aye.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
My vote is yes as well. So the vote is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I know we had a lot of questions on this one. I obviously didn't ask, all my questions were asked by the rest of the board, but I know that in the days leading up, we had a lot of discussion, so really appreciate you guys, the teams clarifying. Okay, great. With that, we move to item 12.4, which is staff recommends approval of the vacation accrual policy for classified management, confidential, and supervisory employee under policy BP 4361, AR 4361. I have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation.
I move to approve proposal. I'm sorry. I move to approve section 12.4 BP 4361 AR 4361 vacation accrual policy for classified management, confidential, and supervisory employees.
Thank you. I have a second. Thank you, Member Zhang. And with that, Ms. Aquino, do we have any comment cards?
We do, President Martinez. 12.4, Board Policy 4361, AR 4361, Vacation Accrual Policy for Classified Management, Confidential, and Supervisory Employees. Board members, this agenda item is a bit confusing. It says BP 4361/AR 4361, and yet the attachment is only AR 4361, Vacation Accrual. Your current Board Policy 4361 is titled Leaves, not Vacation Accrual. The Education Code cited in the current policy suggests it pertains to jury duty and compulsory leave. This policy hasn't been updated since 1996. Is staff recommending removing the current Board Policy 4361? Is it obsolete? If the intention is to upgrade the policy and create an administrative regulation, why is the attachment only for an administrative regulation? I respectfully request the board pull this item, directing staff to make the necessary corrections. But first, let me ask the million-dollar question. How is the district dealing with the vacation hours accrued beyond the amount allowed? Will they get paid out? How much will that cost? Thank you, Cindy Parks.
Thank you, Ms. Aquino. And with that, we will, I will ask staff first. Do you want to go ahead and give a brief summary? I know that this has been an ongoing topic, but I think just maybe before we open it for questions. Yeah.
Yes, I'll ask Ms. Dela Cruz to give an overview on why we are updating and adding this new AR.
Thank you, President Martinez and Acting Superintendent and members of the board. So this AR 4361 sets a cap on vacation accrual for the classified management, confidential, and supervisory employees. We currently do not have a cap at the moment, and in our audit report, our last audit report, we did receive a management letter where they noted that there is potential impact to the district's position by not having a cap, and they recommended that we establish one. So the one that we're proposing is tailored around the existing policy that we have with our classified unit, and it's pretty much allowing 30 days max that they would be able to accrue in a year, and as of July 1, they would have to have a total of 30 days, including the new allocations that they received in July. And there's also a requirement to use all of the accrued vacation before they retire. That's kind of gives you a summary of the important pieces of the policy.
Let's open it up for questions from the board. you know, I know this is a difficult topic because this is it's been an ongoing issue that's required us to, you know, to basically correct years where we've let this vacation accrue without a cap. You know, we as just taking our fiduciary responsibility, you know, very seriously need to think about how we are managing the resources of our district. You know, vacation is meant to be taken. That's also another thing, right? Is vacation is meant to step away, to refresh. And that also tells us a little bit about the way we've managed is we've just kind of allowed people not, our employees not to take it. And so I think that two things. One, we really need to consider, you know, making sure we're maintaining the best interest of our district's finances and encouraging our employees to take that vacation that's allotted. So, you know, I'm really glad we are coming to the point where, you know, we need to rectify the situation. I want to acknowledge that this is a sensitive subject, and we are. This has been an ongoing issue for many years, and not an easy conversation to have, but I think an absolutely needed one. So I just wanted to thank staff for bringing the recommendation forward. And I know we, of course, are going to always looking out for the best interest of our employees as well.
President Martinez, I have a question. And I know Superintendent Salinas reached out to me earlier and addressed some of the concerns. One of them being whether we have whether we're making any changes, amending or rescinding any of our current policies. And she did clarify that we are not. We are just creating a new policy, which will be tied to the current board policy 4661. However, I just did have a question regarding, I went into Gamut and looked for the policy. And this is where there was just some confusion on my end, because we do have board policy 4361.9. I don't see any just 4361 in general. So
it's there.
If you have to look at the 4,000 and don't search up 4361. So if you look under the main category 4,000, it lists all the 4,000s, and you'll see the board policy 4361 there. So this adds the AR under that policy.
If I may, to add on to Member Gutierrez's comment, there does exist in the 4,000 series, if you scroll to the very bottom, it's 4361. But my question on the administrative side would be that as I assume it would occur right now, the administrative regulation that's currently presented would straight up take the place of the current 4361 that exists. There is a 4361.2, 0.5, and 0.9 that all have administrative regulations tied to them. So my request would be that this item gets pulled, that the administrative, or that the, you know, the technical things get corrected so that it does appear correctly in our administrative regulations and our board policies, so that there's no confusion.
There is no replacement. We're not replacing any board policy. So with each board policy, there's ARs underneath each board policy. So this is a new administrative regulation that falls under 4361.
I understand that, but the way it's labeled in board docs, the document, the PDF that's attached to the agenda item in board docs isn't labeled as such. And so I think that it would be a mistake for the board to approve this right now, unless or until it's corrected so that it would appear correctly in Gamut. I could be wrong. I could be making a huge stink of this, but I think I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think everybody would feel better if we take a step back and we just make sure that this is correct before anything gets approved.
I would like to echo
hang on, sorry. I know Superintendent Salinas, you and I spoke about this, so I'll give the opportunity because I knew that this topic was going to surface. I seen some comments, questions floating around. So I think my ask was, if we know that this is going to be a question and ask, can we have the documents ready to show? If we don't have that, I'm going to have to support us, recommending that we pull it. Because so that's my ask. Do we have the documents to show that?
Technically,
Yeah, so
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Dela Cruz, if you want to project your screen. So the way it works with board, and as she's doing that, the way it works with board policies is that you have the umbrella policy. This is the board policy. And within that, it's staff work as an AR, administrative regulation, as to how parts or aspects of that board policy are operationalized. And so what we're bringing forward today is no change to the current board policy and no change to all of the others that were listed. What we're doing is adding a new one, because what we recognize is that for many years we have not had one that is specific to our management, classified management, confidential supervisory employees. There's one that already exists for CSEA, and so this is actually mirroring what exists with them. But it needed its own number. And so as she's sharing this AR, it actually shows it. And then also, Ms. Dela Cruz, I don't know if you can also show the board policy. Yeah, and in terms of what goes into Gamut, so the process is pretty, can be pretty extensive. So, I mean, it doesn't just automatically get uploaded. We certainly are in accordance with the California School Boards Association and what their recommendations are. And then it goes through the process. You certainly can also go through, every district is different. In some districts, administrative regulations don't even come to the board. That is just the work that's done with staff. In our district, it's different, and that's why we're bringing it forward. But I think the other reason we're bringing it forward is because this has been such a long-standing, messy, very delicate situation that we wanted to also bring up publicly. So I'm going to let Ms. Dela Cruz kind of walk us through it.
May I ask a quick question? My apologies, President Martinez. Just don't we normally bring board policies for first reading and then we bring it for second reading? I noticed we don't have a first reading on the policy. So would it be a first and second reading?
We would leave that to the discretion of the board, and certainly that is an option. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and there's been much discussion about whether it's a board policy change versus an AR. So I think let's give it a couple more minutes. I know we talked about it. I think we did want to give them the staff the opportunity to walk through here, why this is correct. If not, then we pull it, or the recommendation will be to pull it and bring it back corrected. But go ahead, Ms. Dela Cruz.
Yeah, so technically this is correct. So what I was pointing out in the recommendation, that it does fall under this board policy. We're not changing this board policy. It's the administrative regulation that falls under this board policy. So the leaves are all under board policy 4361. And the way that we administer this policy are through the administrative regulations. So the AR 4361, which is labeled as AR 4361, this is what would go into the AR as 4361. So it's a new AR. It's not replacing any existing ARs, and it's not changing the board policy piece. This is the AR that goes under that. So technically, yes, this is correct.
Ms. Dela Cruz, if I'm still
sorry.
having.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Student Member Castillo. Ms. Dela Cruz, I think what's missing is the relationship. I think, us looking at the memo and articulating that it's new 4361, I think we get that. But I think it's the association to the board policy and what we should be presented together, right? So I don't think there's a dispute about what's in the memo, that whether the memo is correct or not.
Yeah, so I'm having an issue with the way this is going to be codified in the AR and the BP, because Ms. Dela Cruz, if I understand you correctly, that you're going to just append the text of this new document onto the end of 4361, which to be completely honest with you, has nothing to do with what is presented in this new document. So I think it is grossly incorrect to approve this and then try to, you know, slip it in there.
Yep.
Sidebar, you should have never.
Why don't I, I'd like to, excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah,
So
sure.
please, and we have to also be very mindful. She is not trying to slip something in. So
Okay, I do apologize for saying
Okay,
that.
all right,
but-
all right. Point of order. Let's get back on. So sorry for the interruption, Student Member Castillo. Miss Salinas, I think we have
Yeah,
a
let
direction
me
here.
propose something. Let me propose something. So, so as what we're looking at right now, this is the board policy, and yes, doesn't seem like there's a lot to it. It's like we're used to these long, you know, drawn out sentences and details, and then it references all of these educational codes. So this is the board policy, as blank as it looks. This is what it is. But why don't I do this? Why don't we listen for a couple of more edits? We can take this as a first reading for this AR, and then we can bring it back on the 14th as for a second reading, and we can certainly take your edits and make sure we have both, and I think clarify some of the questions that are out there. So that would be my recommendation, to take this as a first reading, but listening for edits and making sure we bring in the edits for the next time.
Okay. Member Nguyen?
Yes, so if you go back to Gamut and take a look at it, there are board policies and ARs that have the same number association to it. So that is what I believe, and I don't want to put words in Ms. De La Cruz's mouth, but I'm assuming that that is what she is referencing in terms that is okay and that is correct. There can be a separate board policy and a separate AR that have the same numbers associated to it. And then on top of that, there are like amendments or additionals with the .2 or the .5 or and so on. So that is how it is set up. And if I'm explaining it correctly, Mrs. De La Cruz.
Yes, Member Nguyen, you're absolutely right. So if you look at this list here, this is all of the 4,000s under our board policies. So for example, here you have a BP 4358, employee security, and then you have your AR 4358, employee security. So what this does is it shows you the main policy, and then the AR shows you how that policy is implemented. So it's really the procedure. So if I look at that, you see how it's very, I mean, it's a policy. It's not very specific. So the ARs make it more specific. I don't know if that.
Yeah, so I would like to, yeah, so I think, you know, in the spirit of one who always harps on process, we spoke about this, and I think that some of us may have some comfort. I think in the spirit of everyone gaining the comfort that the process was followed, let's go ahead and let's take it as a first reading. Let's assume we're going to bring it back. For me, the question is timing. What do we have a before June 30th timeline, or can it wait till July?
Yes, we do have a timeline. This is effective July 1. And I also want to point out, this has also gone through our legal. So this is something that our legal guided us through as well.
I understand that, but sometimes it's important to do our due diligence and present all the documents if we know there's going to be some questions. Okay, but I know we've talked about a special meeting coming into next week. I know we talked about it earlier when we amended the agenda. Is this an item we could vote at that time as well? Doesn't require a regular meeting for that?
Does not require a regular meeting.
All right, so let's assume we're going to bring it back for the second reading and the approval at the next special meeting coming up, hopefully in the next week. Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Thank you, Ms. De La Cruz.
Member Martinez, I know we're it's for the sake of time, but because of what Ms. Salinas said in regards to providing some recommendations, and as I hear Member Castillo, I don't know if his point is being understood. And I just wanted to clarify that the issue is not whether it's numbered correctly. It's a bit more of the process and how we are titling the title we are using in regards to the agenda, how it's being agendized. So I won't take additional time because it will be brought back. However, I would like Member Castillo's point to maybe if Ms. Salinas can reach out to him, because I don't think it's being fully understood, and it really does need to be addressed.
And you can also email me, Cesar. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For the sake of brevity, I'll just compose an email to you, Superintendent Salinas, for that, just to make sure. I'll send it to the entire board just to make sure everybody gets it.
Thank you.
So President Martinez, should we amend the motion and state we will bring the item back for next reading at the next?
Yes, please, Ms. Aquino.
I rescind my second.
Okay, so can we, who had made the initial motion? I'm sorry. Okay, so you rescind your motion?
I rescind my motion. I rescind my motion to approve 12.4.
Okay, so now the motion is, the staff recommendation is that we take this as a first reading and bring it back at the special meeting to be scheduled sometime next week. It has to happen next week. Okay, so may I have a motion for that? For the first reading.
I don't think you need a motion to bring it back.
We don't. Okay, to convert it to a first reading. Sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
So I would say make a motion to take this as a first reading, have a second, and then with the edits that the board has brought forward.
Yeah, I think we did. So may I have a motion to convert to a first reading?
Go ahead, Member John.
I move that we convert item 12.4 board policy 4361 AR 4361 as first reading with the edit to bring back as a second reading the next board meeting.
Thank you. I have a second.
Second.
Okay. Member Nguyen seconds. Student Member Castillo?
No, because it sounds like now you're amending the agenda, but I'll say no further on that.
I'm sorry?
My vote is no.
Okay, thank you. Member Nguyen?
Oh, I'm gonna go no.
Okay, so we are not, okay. Go, Miss.
Point of order, and sorry, Ms. President Martinez, for interrupt. I think the issue is that typically when we do have board policies and we have first reading, we just take it as is, but it's usually labeled as a first reading and then we move on. In this case, because it's not labeled as is, Member Castillo said we are amending the agenda. So I don't think we need to take a vote on it. We just need to say that we are bringing this item back. However, there will probably be some adjustment to the title. I don't know if once it gets brought back, if it needs to come under the same title, or if it can be addressed as a second reading. So I think that's here before we even proceed to continue the motion.
Okay, so the recommendation you're asking for is, and so I'll refer myself to you, Superintendent Salinas, is the recommendation is that the item is pulled, is what I'm hearing, right? It's not an amendment that it gets pulled and gets brought back, right?
Either will work.
Yeah.
But if that's what I'm hearing, yes.
Okay. So if that brings everybody more procedural comfort, I'm okay with that. Okay, so we have pulled item 12.4. The direction, though, and we need to give this direction, is it needs to come back And we can certainly discuss at agenda setting the appropriate title, but it needs to come back before June 30th. Okay.
Point of order, I believe there's a vote still open that hasn't concluded yet.
I thought the motion has no second.
Sorry, right. So, okay, so let's kill. So, Student Member Castillo, I'm gonna actually make it an executive decision here. I am gonna go back to, because at the end of the day, what we're hearing is that the motion was not valid. So let's go with that. Okay. So then back to Superintendent Salinas. The ask is please pull the motion, please pull the item, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone for weighing in. Okay, with that, item 12.5 was pulled earlier in the meeting. I'm going to, two things before we get into item 12.6. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to ask for a motion to extend the meeting because beyond 10 o'clock. I'm also going to propose a recess. So, all the parliamentary buffs in the room, what do you want to do first? Do you want to take a 5-minute recess, or you want to do the extension now?
I'd like to make a motion that we extend the meeting to 11 p.m.
Okay.
I second.
May I have a second? Sorry, was that you, Member Wynn? Okay.
Yes,
Member
I
Wynn?
second.
Okay, Member Wynn seconds. Student Member Castillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Wynn?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
And I'm an aye as well, so we will be extending the meeting till 11 o'clock. Okay. Now, can we, I would like to ask for a recess.
I move that we take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you. And may I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can just show of hands if you support a 5-minute break. Okay, fantastic. All right, we will recess for 5 minutes.
My
Oh,
apologies. I'm so sorry. I'm on another screen taking minutes I didn't see. Was it all 4 hand
yes,
votes?
oh, yep, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, who are we missing?
Executive Cabinet, but I think we should be able to proceed, and I can act as your secretary in the meantime. Oh,
I think, can I just, oh, sorry, Miss Celine. I thought I just saw Miss, oh, she said that it just booted her out. So let's give her a minute.
President Martinez.
Yes, there she is.
Here I am. So I'm going to exit now the meeting. I have everything thus far. I can get the rest. Member Gutierrez can repeat your motions, and I sent you the other two comments for consent.
Okay.
And I will get the minutes taken care of after your meeting.
Okay. Well, Miss Aquino, thank you so much for seeing us through through most of today and helping us leading up through this meeting. It's very, very heavy agenda. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We wish you only wonderful things in your new district. We're here for anything you need. Okay.
And same with you, and I can help with next week and front load any meetings as you guys have them coming up. I know it's a different time, so I'm happy to help the staff who's pitching in my absence. So not a worry. Give me a call and I will check in tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Dr. Triplett. Nice to see you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Miss Salinas, you're back with us. Okay, all right. So now we've got to 11. All right, moving on to item 12.6, Resolution 2074, specifications of the election order. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2074. Ms. Salinas?
Yes, so this is the regular election for board members in Newark Unified School District, and our election will be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. The attachment shows how we have 4 open seats, 3 4-year terms, and 1 2-year term. And we bring this forward as part of our regular process and ask for your approval.
Thank you very much for clarifying. May I have a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. So again, the motion is staff recommends approval of Resolution 2074, specifications of the election order. Motion made by Member Gutierrez, seconded by Student Member Castillo. Member Zhang, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Gutierrez? I'm sorry, I just skipped you, Student Member Castillo. Looking
My
right
vote
at
is
you.
yes.
Okay, Member Zhang? Please.
Aye.
Member Gutierrez? Thank you. Member Nguyen?
Yes.
And my vote is aye as well. So the motion carries approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, with that.
President Martinez, only just so it can be reflected on the minutes that Member Rodriguez is not here.
Oh, thank you very much. And I know that Ms. Aquino made note of earlier, so I don't know that we need to repeat it, everyone. She mentioned that he exited at a certain time, but thank you for that. Item 12.7 is the adoption of the COVID-19 operations written report. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 20, oops. Adoption of the COVID-19 operations written report. I may have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation.
I move that we approve the recommendation for the COVID-19 operations written report.
May I have a second?
Second.
Member Gutierrez seconds, I think. Okay, are there questions or staff, if you'd like to summarize, or if there are questions before staff summarizes? We've all had a chance to review the report.
Yeah, just briefly, this is as you know, our LCAP has been moved to December, and so per Governor Newsom and direction we were given by the state, this is just an update as to what we've done to date and some planning moving forward.
Okay.
I apologize, President Martinez. I did not check the public comment if it was on this number or the following one, if you have that information. Or if you just check it, I'll check right now.
Let's see. Who's, Letty, do you have the public comments? Let me.
They're not. I have them. They're not this.
There isn't anything. Okay, so we're okay. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Sorry, were you speaking, Superintendent Salinas? Or you just kind of gave what the
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Superintendent Salinas, I know that I had asked a question, and I think it's just important to, for those folks that are listening, there is one section in the report, because I think one of the questions I'd asked is this all backwards looking? This is all the things that we've done to mitigate.
Yes.
Then there's the section around childcare, that looks like it's a little bit more forward looking or just kind of states that, that this is what we have, but we didn't really apply, right? We didn't use our childcare. So if you can just kind of give some context to.
Yes, absolutely. So with this report, what the request from the state was, highlight how you will continue to serve meals to students, which we did as a district. You will continue to serve to do distance learning, remote learning, and so we shared an update around that, and then certainly around the PPE and what we're doing to keep our schools sanitized. But the other piece was around childcare, and so as you said, most school districts, particularly small ones like ours, did not offer childcare for first responders. And in fact, with our first responders that inquired, we directed them to the county that had a childcare. What we have in here is some planning around what will happen for next year, the possibility that we may have to increase childcare spots for some of our employees and certainly for our community. And so it's some planning around that once we have a decision around the model, how do we augment more spaces for childcare?
And actually, I did have one question that I just got reminded of, if I may, Ms. Salinas. In there, I know that it's also mentioned regarding the hotspots, and I know at one point, you mentioned that we had them, but I don't think I ever followed through in regards to if they've been actually dispersed and communities.
Yes, so we did purchase 150. I believe it's 150, it could be 130 hotspots, and we were able to distribute some of them. There was such a run on them that they came really late. So what we decided as a district is that families that already had the hotspots, they're actually keeping them through the summer. Same with our Chromebooks. So we did not collect back Chromebooks, but we have some more hotspots left, and that's going to be prioritized our McKinney-Vento identified students, and so that's our priority for the fall. So we do have them now with us.
Thank you.
I just have one clarification. So in terms of the childcare program, I know that it says provide a description of the steps that have been taken by the local education agency, but so if we haven't taken those steps and this is for upcoming school year, shouldn't it be clarified in the description?
We checked with our partners at Alameda County office, and this seemed to suffice, particularly because we don't know what next year will look like, and we didn't want to bind ourselves to a certain number of spots. But certainly, we can definitely look at the document again and add more details to it. But again, we don't want to bind ourselves to say a certain number of spots or only for employees, and so we left it very open-ended.
I'm sorry, I think my concern is that it's asking you to provide steps that you've taken, but we really haven't taken.
Right, and really this, because we didn't provide any this summer, or excuse me, not this summer, we didn't provide any during the pandemic because we did not we did not open up our child care centers. So what we said is that we would reserve some of that work for moving forward, but we can certainly, if you want, add clarity to it, but we did not provide any child care during this time off.
Okay, I think it's just misleading because it seemed like you're answering that section and it's saying that, you know, that we took those steps, but
I think that was the
I
same, sorry, remember when that was the nature of my question as well,
Okay.
right? Because it's retrospective, but we know that we did not have childcare available. I think that was the clarification that we wanted to make,
Okay.
right?
We can add that clarification is what I'm hearing, and so we can certainly add that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I will, so who's repeating the motions? Is that you, Member Gutierrez?
Yeah.
Or Member, or Superintendent Salinas is taking over Char's job, or do we, or you want me to do it?
Well, I'll do it. And I apologize. I believe Member Castillo made the motion and I seconded it. Is that correct?
No, I made the motion.
I apologize.
I don't
Okay.
remember who.
I apologize. So Member Jean made the motion and I made the second.
Thank you very much. And with that, Student Member Castillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Aye.
My vote is aye as well, so the staff recommendation is approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we get to the topic of the evening. Item 12.8, adoption of the 2021 budget and the resolution 2075. So we will of course start with a motion and a second to approve. Staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed budget for the 2021 fiscal year, including resolution number 2075, and the public hearing reserve disclosure certificate, and certify that the budget was developed using the state adopted criteria and standards. That is the staff recommendation. May I have a motion and a second to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I second.
Member Gutierrez moves, Member Nguyen seconds. And with that, I will ask, do we have public comment on 12.8?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. I will turn it over to you, Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Dela Cruz, Ms. Kim Lola, and team have been, well, I should say team of two, have been working just very long hours on trying to complete this budget. And so tonight she will go ahead and share some highlights and just some of the next steps. Because as you know, unfortunately, we have been working very hard, and I recognize this board for really moving forward to make the cuts. But of course, now in light of this pandemic, where are we and what's the state of the state? So I'll turn this over to Ms. Dela Cruz.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas and President Martinez, members of the board, and Dr. Triplett, welcome. I'm pleased to present to you the proposed budget for next school year, 2021. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so this is our proposed budget for next school year, 2021. And it needs to be adopted by the governing board by July 1st. And it covers the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. And it includes the budget for our general fund. We have an adult education fund, child development fund, a cafeteria fund, special reserve for other than capital outlay, building fund, our capital facilities, special reserve for capital outlay, bond interest, post-employment benefits, self-insurance, and our property and liability. It includes a multi-year projection for the two subsequent years of 21-22 and 22-23. And in this budget, There is no certification. It's not a positive, negative, or qualified certification, but the county will either approve it, disapprove it, or conditionally approve our district budget. And it needs to be submitted to the county 5 days after being adopted or by July 1, whichever comes first. So our revenues are based on the May revise, as we talked about last month. The governor's proposal is proposing a 10% reduction to our LCFF, our local control funding formula. And this represents 80% of our total revenues. So we're going from about a $54 million LCFF to 49, which is a loss of about 5 million. Our LCAP, which includes our supplemental and concentration grant, is also reduced by 438,000. And our total LCAP for next year is 4.8 million. So I did include one-time CARES Act funding, the 1.4 million, which is part of the allocation to mitigate learning loss for our special education students with disabilities, and also the ESSER funds of 469,000, which is based on our Title I apportionment. And then there's also a proposal to increase the special ed SELPA funds by about 15%. So in our budget, that's an increase of 566,000. So our total revenues is 62 million. And as you can see here, our LCFF does include several pieces to it. We have our base grant and grade span adjustment, the supplemental and concentration grant. We talk about our concentration grant and how that's based on the English learners, low income, and foster youth. The projection is about 55.15%. As you know, we were just below that this year. So we're hoping to capture a few more students to get us over that threshold for next year. The revenues are based on our projected enrollment of 5,600 students next year. This is the demographer's projection. And our projected ADA is 97% of that, which is 5,432. And our funded ADA, which is the higher of either the current year or the prior year's ADA. So we're actually being funded on this year's ADA, which is 5,477, because it's higher than what we're projecting for next year. And then if you look at the 2 out years, the same pattern. So I've included a projection of 5,574 in enrollment and just kind of staying the same the following year. And then the ADA would be about 97% of that, which is the 5,407. And the funded ADA, again, it's the higher of either the previous year ADA or the current year. So because the previous year is higher, you see our funded ADA is actually higher. And then this just shows you the chart of how our enrollment is still declining. Part of the governor's solution to reduce the budget is to defer our payments. So our apportionment is usually given to us in 12 payments. And it's given to us in what they call the 559 distribution. So we get 5% of our funding in July, 5% of our total apportionment in August, and then 9% each from September through June. So this year he's proposing to start delaying our June payment and give it to us in July. And then next year we'll actually have 3 months of delayed payments. So in April, that will be delayed until August. And then in May, we won't get that payment until September. And then the June payment we'll receive in July. So this represents about $15 million. So if you figure 9% of our apportionment, it's about $5 million each month. And we'll be able to cover that through interfund borrowings. In our expenditures, we do have 83% of our expenditures in salaries and benefits. We've included the reduced rates for the STRS and PERS contributions that the district makes towards the employees' retirement. And it also includes the reductions that were based on the board-approved resolutions of about $3 million, which includes the certificated FTE reductions of 7.6 FTEs. There was a 3.7 reduction in classified FTEs and the one-day furlough for management. So our total expenditures for next year is about $64.7 million, which is 3.2 million less than this current year. So the bottom line, if you look at this table, the first part of our budget, this is the top part, is our operating budget. So our revenues total between unrestricted and restricted funding is 62 million. Our expenditures total 64. And so if you take the revenues less the expenditures, you can see our total deficit is 2.6 million. And we also have contributions to contribute from our unrestricted to our restricted programs, mostly for the special ed program, which is almost $9 million. And with that, the net increase and decrease to our fund balance is a total of 2.6 million. So how that impacts our fund balance. We have a beginning fund balance of 4 million in the unrestricted, and then the 2.2 in the restricted, for a total of 6.3. And you take the net increase or decrease from that, so we end up with an ending fund balance in the unrestricted of 1.3 million, because this is really the part that counts towards our reserves. We can't use any of our restricted ending fund balance towards reserves. So in our reserves, when you take the 1.3 million and add it to our special reserves in Fund 17 of 2.2 million, we have a total reserve available of 3.5 million. And the minimum required is 3% of total expenditures. So if you take 3% of this total, the 64.7 million, the required minimum is about 1.9 million. So for our budget year, we will be able to meet that minimum required. So see, these are some of the assumptions that were built into the budget. And again, this is all based on the governor's May revise. There's no COLA for this year and the next 2 years. The change in LCFF is minus 10. And it stays the same for the next 2 years, no increase or decrease. And in our STRS, there's a reduction of about 2% each year. Same thing with the PERS. Our lottery per ADA pretty much stays the same. We get $153 per ADA for unrestricted and $54 per ADA for the restricted. And this is the fund that's actually helping us pay for the science adoption that you approved this evening. The step-in column, which is the natural movement of our certificated staff from one step to another every year, is estimated at 1.7% and then classified at 1.2%. We've included the 1% increase and the 1.75% increase for next year for both the certificated and classified, and budget reductions that were approved by the board of 1.5 million this year, and then the 1.6 next year. Again, this is just our enrollment projections, which we went over in the earlier slides. So when you look at our multi-year projection based on all of those assumptions, you can see that in the first subsequent year in 21-22, we will end up with a $4 million deficit. And with that deficit, it's depleting our ending fund balance. So now we're at a negative 2.8 million in our fund balance. And then of course our reserves, even if you look at our special reserves of Fund 17, we only have negative 553,000 available. And then the following year, with not having the one-time money from the federal stimulus and not having COLA and continuing the 10% reduction, now we're looking at a $6.6 million deficit in 22-23, and further deteriorates what we have available in our fund balance and what we're required to have in our reserves. So total deficit in the next 3 years is 13.5 million. So although we will be able to meet our reserves requirement for the budget year 2021, we will not be able to meet it in subsequent years. These are the other funds that we do have in our budget. We have an adult education fund, and we've estimated that to be balanced. And then the child development funds, we have same thing, a balanced budget and an ending fund balance of 253,000. Our cafeteria fund is our child nutrition program. We also have ending fund balance here of 481,000. And this is our special reserves, the 2.2 million. The building fund, this is our bond fund, the 8 million. And the capital facilities, this is our developer fees. We have 16 million in there. And the special reserves for capital outlay, I think this is also known as the Russian fund. There's 11 million in the ending fund balance. And then the bond interest and redemption, this is connected to our building fund, and then the self-insurance fund. So all of these funds will be available for interfund borrowing in the event that we need it to cover our deferrals, except for the funds that are related to the bond, which is the building and the bond interest fund. So the latest news is that the Senate and the Assembly, the legislature, did pass their budget, but they have not reached an agreement with the governor. And some of the key points of the legislature's budget hasn't changed much since the last time we met and we talked about the May revise. So they reject the 10% reduction that the governor's proposing, and they're adjusting it with 2.31% COLA. They're allocating the federal funds of $4.5 billion for the impacts of the COVID-19, and they're allocating the 1.4 billion in the federal ESSER funds and 2.3 billion in funding for the STRS and PERS retirement systems, and extending the ADA to hold harmless to 2021, which is proposing to keep the ADA the same as 1920. And then the instructional day requirements is looking at some flexibility. So in summary, our proposed budget for next year, we have a projected deficit in our unrestricted funds of 2.8 million. This does include a 1.9 million in one-time money from the federal stimulus funds. We have our total deficit estimate for this year and the next 2 years is about 13.5 million. And the assumptions in our multi-year projections, they include over $4 million in the budget reductions that we were already identified based on the resolutions. And that includes $1 million savings that we were anticipating for school consolidations and closures for next school year. If this is not implemented, then we'll have to identify other reductions. We will be able to meet our 3% for next year, but will not be able to meet it in the next 2 subsequent years. We are still waiting for the governor and the legislature to come into some agreement and for the governor to sign the budget. And as soon as the governor signed the budget, we then have 45 days to make our budget revisions. This is our budget cycle. We are in June. The next step is going to be our year-end actuals, and then our first interim will be coming up after that. And that's all I have. Do we have any questions or comments at this time?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll open it up to the board with questions.
Yeah, so I guess I had that follow-up question that I asked previously in private regarding the object code 5000. So in the past 2 subsequent years, we've seen the service and operating expense category every single year we're like under projecting by at least 1 to 2 million, primarily due to the rising cost of the special education contract, moving that from the like in lieu of having a full-time employee costing the general fund certificated salary portion, we move that to the contract portion, which is professional services and consulting. So, but this time we see we are projecting in the object 5000 category 1 million, even lower than this year. And the answer that I got is from staff is that we have the resolution 2061 and resolution 2158. Can you remind the board what is resolution 2061 and 2158?
Yeah, if you remember, those were the reductions that we identified and approved to balance our budget in the next 2 years. So in that resolution, we had items in the 5,000 categories, for example, the solar project, we anticipate some savings in there. Trying to think, utilities such as the water from the MOU with the city of Newark, there was anticipated like $60,000 savings there. We there's the different categories that were in the 5,000s that would reduce the budget based on those resolutions. So we incorporated those reductions in this budget.
So can you talk about which object code actually includes the utility cost? Is that the operation and housekeeping services object code 5500?
It's in the 5500s. Yeah, it's in
Okay.
the 5000s. Mm-hmm.
And remember, Jean, were you speaking about professional consulting or the operations housekeeping?
No, I'm actually talking about the entire 5000 object code, which is a service
Okay,
and
the
other
entire, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
yeah, services and other operating expenditures. And we had 11 million this year, but we're projecting roughly 10 million next year. What I'm asking is, under the subcategory of 5000 object code, which subcategory actually is the one that includes the utility that we save from the solar panel?
Well, the actual object code would be under the 5500.
Oh, that's the operations and housekeeping services?
Yeah, we took it out of because that's where the utilities are. That's where we would save. It's under utilities.
So I actually don't really remember how much solar is going to save us in the first year. Like I said, the reason I'm asking this object code is indeed in the past 2 years, I've been on the board for 2 budget cycles already that we under project this one for 2 million, probably 1 to 2 million, 2 years in a row already. And and this, if you really measure the trend lines, it's more likely that without any resolution, this is going to be like a 12 million item. And I see we are projecting 9.8 million, almost 10 million. So I see potential I just want to know the roughly 2 million saving from the two resolution, whether the solar panel and the 60,000 is really enough to make up to the 2 million. So we're really bending the curve here right now for this part.
Yeah, I think that's a good question in terms of what we have trended to, and in particular, I think, thanks for sharing that, Ms. De La Cruz, in terms of where the utility savings is, because when I looked at the particular line item for housekeeping services, you know, and just given the current condition with COVID and the uncertainty of how much expenditure is going to go to that line, I was surprised to see it go low. So that assumes that if I'm growing my my housekeeping cost, my reduction in utilities has to be pretty steep. So curious if you kind of thought through to Member Zhang's, you know, how aggressive is one curve, the downward curve versus what projected upward curve in housekeeping expenses.
Sure, and we can certainly take a look at that more closely.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is, I understand that the budget, even though we're adopting the budget today, but this is really an evolving tax.
Yeah.
Like we can see change every 1 or 2 months. I do have additional questions, but I will let other board members to ask first.
Member Martinez, I just have a brief question, and because it was mentioned regarding solar, do we have any timeline regarding that topic?
Yeah, the last time we talked to them, they were anticipating maybe breaking ground in late, maybe winter, like December, January right now.
Of this year?
Of this 2020, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have a question as I was looking at where is it? I had it and I looked at it's the travel and where is it? Sorry, I keep moving it back and forth. It's interesting because I mean we see a significant reduction, but it's still pretty a pretty high number. What goes into the travel line item? Sorry if I'm trying to find it.
Well, those are workshops, professional development.
Sorry, travel and conferences. Sorry, yes, there we go.
Yeah,
Page
travel
3.
and conference.
Yeah.
So it's workshops, it's training, conferences. So all the costs associated with that. So if somebody goes to a conference, it could include the mileage, it could include the airfare, and any workshops that our staff attend, and any professional development training.
Okay. Right, and I mean, you know, I think about it as we're kind of marching into next year. It's a significant reduction. Of course, we always want to make sure we don't completely prevent, you know, certain trainings, but you know, we spent somewhere around $250,000 right last year, so it's a significant number. So I think that's just one of those things we probably need to be thinking about, especially with regards to you know, online learnings. The more and more we are exposed, the more hopefully we can find opportunities for that, for this kind of training, so we continue to keep that particular line item down going forward.
Martinez, if I may.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, if you had more, I'll
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I just was still looking at the budget, so go ahead.
Yeah, as you look, I just want to make, this might be something minor. Actually, I know it's something minor, but as I was doing some housekeeping, I did realize just how much paper we use, and just in particular to what comes to the board. And I know with everything going digital, we have at least saved on that end. And however, I do know that our students still need packets and et cetera. So even though we might be saving on one end, we could be spending it as another. And I know this, and I say this is minor in the sense of I feel like we're at the point where we have to really nitpick the little things of where we can save. where we can, what real numbers can we really save, and the comment is just more of the response of the, I will say the responsibility of each one of us to make sure that we understand that it is a very critical financial situation that we're in, and it is important to just notice that every little item, every little expense could add up.
I wanted to just, you know, say, I know we spoke about it earlier in the year when we realized that we were, you know, 54.98 or something, right? In the, what is it? In the unduplicated or 50, right?
Yeah, unduplicated pupil
yeah,
percent.
and the unduplicated count was 54.98, right?
Yes.
0.98. I keep thinking, was that one student? Was that two students? And because I think about, you know, what we are projected to be at, and because of course we're always having to cut costs, but man, wouldn't it be great to get that revenue, right? So I guess the question I like to understand is, what's the process that we are going to be using to make sure we are doing the outreach? Because I'm almost positive that we have the count, we just, it's not documented, right, folks, whether they didn't apply or whatnot. So what process will we be followed to make sure that we are reaching every possible family that really is in need, right? And by the way, it helps us get those additional funds for the kids. So anyway, I think that's a big, we can't miss that, right? We just cannot miss that. So that is an ask, and I hope that the rest of the board supports in this ask, that we see something from staff in terms of Ms. De La Cruz. How will we be monitoring that? Okay. In particular, as we go through registration cycles.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of loop back to the revenue side of the equation. Any other questions? I think Member Zhang, you said you had another question.
Yeah, I'm just asking for the insurance costs are nearly doubling this year. I mean, given we all know our car insurance got a big discount these days. Yeah. What are the insurance that costs are doubling with the rate?
Okay, so actually, I remember now looking at that, the data that was loaded was incorrect. So it doubled up on one of the numbers, so we need to make that correction.
Okay.
The actual number, I think if I remember, it was should be about 600,000, and I think it doubled it up.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Just one last confirmation that last time we checked that 2019 to 2020, this current fiscal year, we'll be having 600,000 deficit. I mean, probably lower than that once we close the book.
Yeah.
So when you do the multi-year funding, the reserve, did we take into consideration of that?
Yes, that was the estimated
okay.
Ending balance from this year that we used.
Okay. I mean, just like I said, I think this is, even though we're adopting a budget, given that the legislature has yet to pass a budget that can be signed by the governor, so this is really just a placeholder for us, I believe. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to state it, Member Zhang. If there are if there are no other questions, I'd like to call for a vote. Okay.
Member Martinez.
Yes, if you can please repeat the motion. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll repeat the motion. Motion made by myself and second by Member Nguyen. Oh, sorry. And the motion on the table is adoption of the 2020 and 2021 budget and resolution number 2075.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. I wasn't sure if Student Member Castillo was still on. How do you vote, Student Member Castillo?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Zhang?
Aye.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
And my vote is a yes as well. So the motion to approve the budget, the proposed budget, and the resolution is approved unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Again, to reiterate Member Zhang's comments, you've already managed our expectations. We anticipate some additional changes as we know more from the state leadership. Okay, thank you. And watching the clock, we have about 34 minutes that we need to get everything through. So item 13, consent agenda personnel items, 13.1. Staff recommends the board approve the personnel report as presented. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve.
I second.
Member Nguyen moves. Member Zhang seconds. Are there any public comments on 13.1?
No.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Okay. If not, I'd
One
like.
question. One question.
I just have one question.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Mhm.
In regards to, I know that this last year, one of our science teachers who is a long-term sub at the junior high, he's not certificated, but my question is, he's a wonderful teacher, and how do we and staff motivate or help staff members that we have as long-term subs to be certificated and get them certificated?
Well, we definitely like to encourage them to do when you see that there's a good match between the staff and the kids, and you see the potential in an individual. It starts with a relationship with their principals, and when they come around and they become they get evaluated, we have those conversations with them when they come by to get something processed. We generally hear about the ones that don't go very well, and not so much about the ones that go really well. But we do make a really good effort in trying to motivate those individuals that have the potential to become great teachers to join a credential program. And we offer options. We have different programs that they can try. They can. I know that some of them start with a long-term substitute credentials so that they can try out things on their own. And for the most part, some of them decide to go and continue their education by going to a credential program.
Well, my main concern is that we're missing these individuals, and we don't have, the proper resources to be able to identify them. And I would really like us moving forward to be able to have those regular evaluations and make more of an effort from the administrative executive and to really reach out to the principals and make sure that they identify individuals who are long-term subs that are really dedicated to the students, and we want to be able to keep them, because they are making an impact and a positive influence on our students, and we would like to see them be certificated.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you. And I think we want to clarify that I don't think we're saying it's not happening. I think part of it is, once again, getting visibility to the process that's being followed. I think that's from us, as a board, I think that's what the ask would be. And I think, I know that we're trying to get so many of these administrative last minute things, but as we start to look at the governance calendar and for going into next year and setting some staff report outs, I think that's a great one, because I know this is a topic that keeps coming up, the credentialing and how we're hiring, just getting visibility to that. Member Nguyen, I think, I think that would be fantastic. And we can go ahead and discuss it with the incoming superintendent as well. Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, we do have a motion on the table to accept the consent agenda item, personnel items. And Member Gutierrez, who made the motion?
I have motion by Member Zhang and second by Member Nguyen.
Thank you. And Member Nguyen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
I think I seconded the motion. I don't think I was the one making it.
Oh, I apologize if I confused them. So motion by Member Nguyen, second by Member Zhang.
Okay, thank you. And Member Nguyen's vote is a yes. Member Zhang,
Aye.
your vote? Thank you. Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
And my vote is a yes as well. So motion passes unanimously, 4 votes. Okay, next item is consent agenda non-personnel items. So the recommendation is to approve items 14.1 through 14.21 unless there's any questions and we'd like to pull an item or comments.
President Martinez, I'd like to pull out based on public comment 14.17 and 14.19.
Okay. So the motion I would need is the approval of the consent agenda items 14.1 through 14.21, less 14.17 and 14.19.
I move adoption of the consent agenda for non-personnel items excluding 14.17 and 14.19.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Member Castillo moves. Member Gutierrez seconds. Oh,
Sorry, I believe there was a public comment on this.
yeah, I'm about to ask for that. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons we pulled it. So is there, go ahead with a public comment.
Okay, just 1 second. Okay, so no, actually, Member Martinez, we could vote on the other ones.
Okay, that's true. We can go ahead and just get those moving. So yes, if we could vote on the exception of 14.17 and 14.19. Student Member Castillo?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Aye.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
My vote is yes as well. Thank you.
So then the first one, 14.17.
Do we have comments for both items or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you go ahead and read that, please?
Okay, so 14.17, and it reads, board members, I appreciate the effort since the last school board meeting to try and correct the site council membership composition. It is still incorrect. You do not have an equal number of parents, guardians, and students. At the secondary level, when you decide to include students on the council, you must have 25% parent or guardian and 25% student representation, as the box on page 11 indicates. With that in mind, you're still lacking a student, which triggers the need for additional teacher to balance the numbers. Thank you, Cindy Parks.
President Martinez,
Yes.
As I look at that and I'm checking my notes, while it is true that we have it identified that way on page 11 of the template, I think it really speaks to the due diligence we needed to put forward as Ed Services, where technically that is not a requirement of CDE, but it's what we put into our template. So by CDE requirements, she is correct with her parity on her Skype council, but not with what we did in our template. So I think in the interest of not rushing the principal to try to get this together, I would say that I pull this and move this to August so that we can reopen school. She can have time with her community and really take her time to see if there's more interest for more students and teachers to be on this, because as we all know, she has very small staff, and so she has literally 4 teachers, and so this template is probably not fitting what we need for our alternative setting. So that gives us time to work on that. So I would respectfully ask to move this to August.
And just a question on timing in terms of the timing for approval is, would we be okay if we go ahead and move it into August?
You would be, yes. There's no time. Some districts do their SIPSAs in the fall, others do it at the end of the year. So we would be okay with that, moving it to August.
All right, so we will pull items 14.17 and 14.19.
Yes, I suspect that the other, and we should hear the comment, but I'm going to suspect that it may be the same thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought there was only the one comment for both.
I'm going to
Sorry.
suspect it's the same thing, but go ahead.
Apologize. I heard you wrong, Miss. Yes, go ahead, Member Gutierrez.
Ms. Salinas, you are correct, but for the sake of following protocol, I will be reading it. This is for 14.19, and it's the Crossroads Alternative High School 2020-2021 School Plan for Student Achievement. And it reads, Board members, while I appreciate the effort since the last school board meeting to try and correct the site council membership composition, it is still incorrect. At the secondary level, when you decide to include students on the council, you must have 25% parents, guardians, and 25% student representation, as the box on page 11 indicates. With that in mind, you're still lacking a student. As I mentioned during my comments for item 14.17, adding another student triggers the need for an additional teacher to balance the numbers. However, in this instance, the Crossroads Committee will need 2 Crossroads teachers. Since it is my understanding Mr. George Hanlon isn't a teacher at Crossroads, he is a teacher at Bridgepoint. Thank you, Cindy Parks.
So yes, again, so as we know, with her staffing, she has, for all of her programs, she has very few people. And so I think it's, while she is compliant with the California Department of Ed, because we try to have her adhere to the template we have for a comprehensive high school, it's not fair to her. So I don't want to rush the process, and so we'll bring it back in August.
Thank you. And I had understood the comment to encompass both, so thanks for that clarification, Member Gutierrez. Okay. All right, and with that, we move to item 15, report on Board of Education committees. Do we have any, I know we obviously had a study session regarding the GODB survey and the bond. Any other committee reports, communication committee, consolidation committee updates?
For the consolidation committee, we are planning to put together our first meeting because we postponed it, the first one. We're still trying to set the date, so we will get that out soon.
Okay. Did we resolve the facilitator issue? And so
we had a meeting. I want to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it was last week already or 2 weeks ago. I want to say it was last week. But we had to confirm.
Friday.
Last week.
That's Friday.
That's Friday. Okay, thank you. Remember when? Just to confirm our facilitator, we did come to an agreement, and I believe that's we're just moving forward with the new date for the initial meeting.
okay. Any other committee reports then?
And if I could just, I know for the city liaison, I am still waiting for the city manager. I know we had, the city had proposed to reschedule our meeting and move it to the fall, but I did ask if we could reschedule it to late July because they're in recess in August to city council. So hoping to hear back, and I'll follow up with city manager to see if we can do it late July. City liaison.
Thank you, Ms. Salinas. That one slipped my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and with that, we move to item 15.2, board committee reports, announcements, requests, and we will start with you, Mr. Cesar Castillo, student board member.
Thank you, President Martinez. Again, I want to repeat my thanks to all of you for your kind words earlier in the meeting. It really does mean a lot to me. So as this is my last board meeting, I have a few things that I want to share with everybody. So I hope that you'll bear with me. I know I'll try to make it short because I know we have to adjourn in 20 minutes. My service to the students of Newark Memorial High School over the past 2 years has been one of the most formative experiences in my life thus far. When I first stepped into this role, I was very green, and I was definitely not prepared for the whirlwind of events that were to unfold. Nonetheless, I did my best to take everything in stride and learn from my mistakes. The elected board members will know that we don't always see eye to eye on some things, and it's for good reason that this was the case. We have vastly different experiences in the Newark Unified community. The student board member is acutely aware of the student condition and thus has an obligation to speak up when it becomes necessary. My primary focus has always been to do what's right for those I represent. Admittedly, there have been times when I misrepresented the facts and let emotion get the best of me. For that, I sincerely hope everyone can forgive me for these events. But as I have communicated many times over, there are genuine concerns my fellow students hold that the Board of Education is uniquely equipped to address. I only hope that I have shared them in enough detail, but I trust that my successor will be able to elaborate on them if need be. Thanks is owed to a few individuals for the position I'm in today. When I was completing my candidacy form for the position, my science teacher, Mr. Johnson, told me, "I'm only going to sign this if you agree to be a part of school site council." Little did I know that the position I took there would help me understand a lot of the critical discussions in board meetings. Without that additional push, I probably wouldn't have done the level of research that I did. I also want to thank Mr. Goldsmith for being an amazing and inspirational teacher. A lot of my board reports were written after one of your passionate talks to the class. Also, many thanks to Ms. Canales, who I've already spoken about so many times, but I feel compelled to do so again. Her support over the past 2 years has been nothing short of a blessing. There have been times when I was ready to give up, but she stood by me and supported me every step of the way, and I cannot thank her enough. And lastly, I want to thank my fellow ASB officers for the last 2 years. It has been a great honor to work with such a dedicated group of people who just want to make student life better. I know you will all go on to do amazing things in this world. I wish you nothing but the best for your futures, and I hope we can all remain connected. Lastly, I want to share a few thoughts with the community, and specifically with the current and future students of Newark Memorial High School. As you are no doubt aware, the intensity of activism in our nation has ramped up over the past 3 months to a level not seen since the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Stonewall Rebellion of 1969, or the Rodney King protests in 1992. As we learn more about the injustices in our world, it's easy to feel insignificant and powerless to do anything. I have heard from many students over the past 4 years that they don't know what they can do to help fix problems in their own community. To those people, I encourage you to use your voice, regardless of what you believe the outcome may be. Silence does not help the issue. To those who believe they face retribution if they speak up, I remind you that there are laws in place to protect you. We as Americans, Californians, and residents of Newark stand stronger than ever before, but we can only manipulate this strength if we stand united. As the nation works to repair itself, we in the Newark community can also lead change that will affect the way we live, work, and play in this city. Unique to us in the city of Newark is a strong diversity and sense of community that has been tenderly developed and nurtured for decades. It would be nothing short of a crime to let that go to waste in the most trying time since the Great Recession. Frankly, I have tried my hardest to instill change and set a precedent. My only request is that a new leader will take up the mantle and continue this effort. With that, I conclude my closing comments for the last time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very articulate, very eloquent as usual. Gracias, Cesar. All right, and so with that, Member Jean.
Yeah, there is not that much, except I just want to have a general address to the members of our community that we are entering the summer staycation, and this is unusual, really unusual time, but we are a resilient community and we'll go through this together. Due to social distancing, we might be apart, but we're not alone. Apart, but not alone.
Thank you, sir. Member Nguyen.
Again, I just wanted to say congratulations to Member Castillo and good luck as you head off to UCSB. I know you're going to be off to doing great things, and what you said is very true. A lot of times we do not all get along. We do have different perspectives, but actively listening and understanding that sometimes we do say the wrong things and hold ourselves accountable and make like you had said yourself, learn from them. Those are all great things to be doing. And then within our own community, I just hope that we all can come together, show each other kindness, and build each other up in these times. So, and everybody have a great summer out there.
Thank you, Member Wen. Member Gutierrez.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. First and foremost, congratulations to Mr. Castillo, and thank you for your service with us as well. Another congratulations and welcome to Dr. Triplett. Welcome to the team. Looking forward to working with you. And my request is that if it's possible to, I don't have a timeline, but I think due to the times that we're facing, it could be pretty urgent. I do have a request that we do a study session on the pros and cons or the need of having an SRO in our schools. And the reason why I ask that is that because in light of the current actions, it is important that we make all our students feel safe and welcome. And that may not be the case when we especially for our students of color. So in the essence of equity, I think it is important that we review the use or the need of having an SRO in our schools. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thanks Cesar for, really bringing to the forefront or reminding us, that there's a lot of really difficult issues that our kids are grappling with, not just our kids, all of us really, but most importantly our kids as they're learning their way. I was thinking about, and certainly I'm not, educated enough on the topic or well-versed enough to find exactly the right words. But I do think a lot about what you said, Cesar, which is, just these really complicated times and the civil unrest and things are moving, and difficult conversations are difficult to have, but we must have them. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. And we don't talk about Juneteenth. We don't talk about the movement for it to be a recognized holiday because it's so meaningful to so many. But I just wanted to say that because I don't always have the courage to have those conversations and to know to remind not only myself but all of us that our kids, and some kids more than others, really need us to have that courage to have those conversations and to be their advocates, because we can say and have the idea of equity, and we could have a great plan of equity, but if those kids don't have the advocates in us and in the rest of, I'm not sure how many of us are left. There's only 24 of the 89 that are left watching us, but all of us have to be advocates, even though those kids may look different than us and may live differently than us. So anyway, Cesar, thank you for being inspirational. Thank you for being a role model. We don't always agree, but man, the passion is there, and I absolutely respect that. So thank you so much for everything. And with that, I will hand it over to Superintendent Salinas.
Yes, thank you. And so just a few things. Well, first, I do want to see if we can settle on a date for next week. So if you could look at our preference, I was polling in the break, the two ladies, so Wednesday or Thursday. So Wednesday, June 24th, or Thursday, June 25th. So if you could start to look at that, and then what we'll do is just do some phone calls tomorrow to double check with you all. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the evening. We could probably even move it up. I know some of you though have some work commitments, so we'll do some calls tomorrow. But those 2 days would be great. The next thing is welcome, Dr. Triplett. Look forward to working with you. Love Bay Area, and so it will be great to get to know you more and to work with you. And I guess I want to end with echoing the same thing that we are living through some, people say, oh, it's a new time. I don't think it's a new time. I think we always had it. It's just surfacing it up and supporting students to really come forward. I want to remind folks to also, celebrate the good news as well. So like today, the first thing I heard was the Supreme Court upholding DACA this morning, and I tell you, it made my day. And so I know that there's good work ahead of us, and we have to continue to build on those success. So I look forward to the transition and building on our successes, but certainly, absolutely acknowledging the work that we still have left to do. And so please know that on behalf of the staff. I see a lot of principals that are still on, so they've been watching the whole meeting as well, so I think that's good. And a few have texted me saying, I gotta go put my kids to bed. So I will be checking in with the principals tomorrow morning. But thank you. Welcome, Dr. Triplett, and everyone have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas. And with that, I will entertain a motion. How about you, Student Member Castillo, to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Student Member Castillo moves. Member Gutierrez seconds. How do you vote, Student Member Castillo?
Yes.
Geez, sorry about that. Member Nguyen?
Well, I'm really sad to see member Student Castillo go. So, but yes, it's a yes. Sign off.
I thought you were gonna say no. Let's meet longer. Okay, so yes.
I think he wants to go to bed too.
Member Zhang?
Aye.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
And my vote is yes as well. So with that, meeting is adjourned. Thanks everyone for tonight. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.